Chapter 794. The Age of Old. You mean I've returned to the Age of Old? Gu Shan asked. To be more precise, it was a power even more powerful than my space-time infiltration. It had made some sort of arrangement to turn what really happened in the Age of Old into a fragment of space-time, the dark figure of light replied. He sighed. Fortunately, it was only a fragment, otherwise you would have remained there forever, starting your life from billions of years ago, unable to return to me through the space-time infiltration. Gu Shan pondered. If it's only a fragment, how do I get out after entering? The simplest way is to die. After you die, I will naturally be able to pull you back, the dark figure of light replied. What's the other way? Gu Shan asked. No one would waste so much power for no reason, just to create a fragment of space-time. I assume that a certain condition must be fulfilled for the fragment to release you, the dark figure of light replied. A certain condition? I understand, Gu Shan replied. You really do? The dark figure of light asked. Gu Shan replied. That world is too dangerous. I'm actually a bit worried, the dark figure of light said. Don't worry, Gu Shan smiled. Send me there. I won't die so easily for now on, the dark figure of light asked. What do you intend to do? Gu Shan replied. Before, it was mainly because I didn't understand the law of time, nor was I familiar with the primordial heaven realm. That fragment just now was even more unexpected. Now that I've understood the situation, I won't risk my life so easily again. Are you sure? The dark figure of light asked. Gu Shan replied. That is indeed the case. As a cultivator, I'm used to using spirit sense to assess the situation. Now that my spirit sense has been temporarily crippled, I'll have to change my fighting style to adapt to this situation, he sincerely told it. Don't worry, I won't die so easily again, the dark figure of light excitedly replied. All right, let's go again. The tide of darkness surrounded Gu Shan and brought him into the abyss of space-time. Within space-time, Gu Shan was traveling toward a certain point in time. All of a sudden, a mouth several hundred meters tall appeared from the darkness. The monster in the fog of time. It instantly sucked in Gu Shan and the other unknown existences around them. Gu Shan blacked out. He opened his eyes. The dark figure of light stood before him. Gu Shan. The dark figure of light. It was an accident, Gu Shan replied with a serious expression. Again, the dark figure of light asked. Again, Gu Shan said. Bang! The dark tide of light surrounded him. This time, it was much smoother. He took the formation plate from his Shifu, returned to the Justice Iron Fist Club, teleported to the primordial heaven realm, and talked to the tortoise. Then, the scenes from the ancient era appeared again. Gu Shan appeared in the middle of the cultivator formation. The entire land was filled with armored cultivators who were ready to go. In the sky, the light of the flying boat shuttled back and forth. The large war fortress slowly floated. The world was silent. Only the wind kept blowing. Get ready, someone called out. Gu Shan looked towards the direction of the voice and saw a general. The general was clad in crimson armor, silently hovering in the air in front of the war formation, drawing his weapon and loudly issuing orders to the cultivators. Gu Shan held his breath. A split second before the giant head appeared in the sky, he abruptly activated Ground Shrink. A flash of white light. A deep and heavy sound of something exploding came from behind him. A gust of wind swept towards him. But that didn't matter anymore. Gu Shan dodged it. He blended into another group of cultivators, drew his weapon along with everyone else, and attacked the sky. In the sky, the monster's entire body appeared in front of everyone. It had no body, only a single head. Whenever the eyes on its head opened or closed, a white ray of light would pierce through the cultivators on the ground, giving off an earth-shattering noise. The cultivators all rushed forward, disregarding their own lives to kill the monster. After a long and arduous battle, the monster was dismembered. A rain of blood fell from the sky. Such a powerful monster, despite its overwhelming offensive power, was still nothing in front of so many cultivators. Gu Shan silently clicked his tongue. This monster was able to utilize the spirit of light to such an extent, far surpassing Gu Qingshan's understanding. A few dozen more heads filled with eyes appeared in the sky. Someone shouted, "The desolate demon eyes army has arrived. Everyone charge!" The cultivators followed their formation and charged towards the monsters again. The battle had reached its climax right from the start. Gu Qingshan stood in the sky, observed the battlefield for a bit, then stopped moving. He was too weak to get close to the monsters in the sky. He silently thought, "So they're called desolate demon eyes. This part of time seems to be between the age of desolation and the age of old." Gu Qingshan didn't intend to stay idle either. Dodging a few white lights, he focused his mind and formed a sword seal. Both swords appeared. The two swords shot into the sky like streaks of light, chasing each other as they headed towards one of the monsters. Indeed, compared to other cultivators, his offensive power was much weaker. But he had a thaumaturgy. Severance. After being struck by your elemental lightning spirit energy, the target's consciousness will be separated from their body, lasting for 3 seconds. Description: this is an upgraded thaumaturgy that causes loss of control and rigidity. No living being is immune to it. This was a thaumaturgy that came from the war god. The only thing Gu Qingshan couldn't confirm was whether or not these desolate demon eyes were living beings. He silently formed a sword seal. The Chaoyin sword first struck one of the desolate demon eyes. The desolate demon eye's gigantic body suddenly trembled. It stopped moving in the air. The cultivators were very good at taking advantage of opportunities to attack with everything they had. 3 seconds passed in the blink of an eye. The monster let out a low roar of anger. After stopping for 3 seconds, all of its attacks were ready. Over 1,000 pairs of eyes began to shine with white light. In an instant, the Six Paths' great mountain sword caught up and stabbed into the desolate demon eye. All the white light disappeared. The demon eye began to twitch again. This time, everyone attacked with everything they had. Everyone understood that this was their last chance. If they couldn't take this chance to kill this monster, they would have to face its wrath. At the very last moment, boom! The monster exploded into countless chunks of flesh that fell from the sky. The monster was dead. The cultivators all cheered. Gu Qingshan also smiled, feeling a bit regretful. He didn't kill the monster, so he didn't get any soul points. However, at this point, the power of severance was starting to show itself. After being upgraded twice from loss of control to rigidity, then from rigidity to severance, the upgraded thaumaturgy of lightning of life finally showed its true value. A crimson figure flew down from the sky and landed next to Gu Qingshan, the general of the battlefield. He was the one who had been commanding this battle. "Was that your thaumaturgy just now?" the general asked. "Yes," Gu Qingshan casually admitted. "Well done. There aren't many thaumaturgies that can affect a desolate creature. You'll need to use this thaumaturgy a lot more from now on," the general said. "I will." Gu Qingshan nodded. The general waved his hand behind him. "Men!" Immediately, 2 groups of cultivators with powerful auras responded to the order and rushed over. "His cultivation isn't high enough. You'll be responsible for protecting him," the general ordered. "Yes," the cultivators loudly responded. They surrounded Gu Qingshan and the general to protect them. The general looked at Gu Qingshan. Gu Qingshan smiled. In such a high-intensity battle, his only thought was to stay alive. But now, he didn't need to worry about his own life anymore. Since his safety was guaranteed, he could join the battle without any worries. In the sky, the 2 swords gave off intense sword phantoms. They quickly flew through the clouds, circling around the desolate demon eyes to attack. Any demon eye that was hit by them would immediately lose its ability to attack. "Everyone, follow the swords and attack," the general shouted. The cultivators had already noticed what was happening here, so as soon as they heard the order, they followed the 2 swords and attacked the demon eyes. Although there were a lot of desolate demon eyes, they couldn't withstand this kind of massacre. Very quickly, all the demon eyes were killed. The cultivators cheered. "Mighty, mighty, mighty! They had won this battle," the general exclaimed. "Brat, what kind of thaumaturgy is this? Which of the 5 elements did it come from?" Gu Shan was surprised. You don't know? The general shook his head. I've never seen it before, Gu Shan replied. This is elemental life, the general scowled. Elemental life? The 5 elements only consist of metal, wood, water, fire, and earth. Where did elemental life come from? Gu Shan was a bit surprised. He looked at the general and noticed that he wasn't faking it. Could it be that there weren't any mutated 5 elements in the Age of Old? While the two of them were talking, the sky suddenly darkened. The general's expression changed as he flew straight up to the sky and shouted, "Everyone, prepare a large-scale defensive formation." Following his order, the cultivators all descended from the sky and gathered according to their team numbers. The formation users began to prepare the large-scale defensive formation. The cultivators nervously and orderly prepared all the necessary defensive measures. The cultivators who were protecting Gu Shan didn't retreat either. They surrounded Gu Shan and began to prepare defensive formations. All of a sudden, everyone couldn't help but look up at the sky. It was as if the sky itself had been opened. They couldn't see the sun, the moon, the stars, nor the sky. Far in the sky, another world was slowly approaching this one. Gu Shan could already see the blurry image of that world. Countless ferocious figures were preparing to attack in that world. They were monsters that she had never seen before. They were waiting for the two worlds to collide. In the sky, the general angrily shouted, "They're coming. This isn't a test. This isn't a test. They're going to fight. Men, quickly call the Council of Elders. Call the divinities." Before he even finished, a series of earth-shattering noises resounded from the depths of the earth. Countless desperate screams and curses of pain resounded across the entire world. Following that, a strong gust of wind blew from afar, painting the ground red with blood and severed corpses. The cultivators all became rowdy. Gu Shan was also confused. In the other world, the desolate beings were about to fully invade the primordial heaven realm. But something happened in the primordial heaven realm at this crucial moment. Finally, a cultivator covered in blood flew over from far away, place along with the strong wind. While flying, he was wiping the tears of blood from his eyes. The sturdy armor he was wearing was already broken, leaving only half a breastplate around his heart. The cultivator staggered as he flew, almost about to fall to the ground. The general saw him right away. The general rushed forward to catch the cultivator and loudly asked, "Vice General Wong, what exactly happened?" The cultivator swallowed a few mouthfuls of blood and hissed, "Divinities, what happened to the divinities?" "The divinities betrayed us. They ran away." "What did you say?" "The divinities suddenly ambushed us. The command center has basically been destroyed." As soon as he said that, the cultivator's body stiffened and lost all signs of life. Everyone on the ground fell silent. The cultivators still couldn't calm down. Above the sky, another world was slowly approaching the primordial heaven realm. Gu Shan blankly watched this. A few moments later, everything turned to dust. Gu Shan found herself standing on the barren ground again. Chapter 795. Gu Shan stood in the middle of the wilderness. He was silently thinking about everything he saw just now. A surprised voice resounded in the sky. "You actually survived?" Gu Shan looked up. The spirit tortoise was hovering in the sky, looking down at him. "You're only a virtualized realm cultivator. How did you survive that war?" "No. Even if you managed to find a place to hide and barely survive, that fragment wouldn't have let you out. You could only stay inside and relive everything over and over again," the spirit tortoise pondered and said. "I have a thaumaturgy that can be very useful in war," Gu Shan replied. Hearing that, the spirit tortoise's gaze changed a bit. "So that's how it is. Even though he's as weak as a speck of dust, he has a thaumaturgy that can change the course of a war. This brat must have contributed greatly to the war for the fragment to recognize him and let him out." The spirit tortoise sighed emotionally. After countless years, someone has finally managed to survive outside the heavenly palace. I'm not dreaming, am I? Its tone was filled with bitterness and vicissitudes of life. Gu Shan didn't know how to respond. Gu Shan thought for a bit and tried asking, Senior, can this humble one enter the barren cloud heavenly palace now? The spirit tortoise regained its senses and replied in realization. Of course, but there are only two ways to enter the barren cloud heavenly palace, and from my perspective, I feel that one of them is very suitable for you. This humble one is willing to hear the details. In a moment, I will take you to steal the jade disc. This is the fastest and most direct method. Steal the jade disc? Gu Shan doubtfully asked. The spirit tortoise explained. There are a total of 2 jade discs. One is the sect master's jade disc, held by every sect master of the barren cloud heavenly palace. The other is the guardian jade disc, kept inside the vermilion bird's nest. Although the vermilion bird is dead, its remnant soul still remains. We need to steal the jade disc from its nest. Gu Shan asked. What should we do? The spirit turtle said, I'll leave my body in a while and fight the vermilion bird. When I fight it, use the opportunity to climb up the tree and retrieve the jade disc from its nest. The vermilion bird won't be too far away from its nest, so my battle with it will most likely affect you. With your strength, you'll die if you're touched by even the slightest shockwave from our battle. Then what should we do? If it doesn't work, shall we use another method? Gu Shan asked. The spirit turtle said, No, I will teach you an ability. It can help you preserve your life in a battle like this. The spirit turtle said sternly, Now that you've grasped this ability, it will assist you in surviving in many environments in the future. You won't die so easily. Gu Shan's heart skipped a beat. Just what kind of powerful divine ability could allow a weak person to survive the battle between 2 ancient spiritual beasts? In addition, he had never heard of divine abilities being imparted to others. No matter what, he's willing to teach me such a powerful divine ability. Gu Shan gratefully replied, Thank you for your kindness, Senior. May I ask what kind of divine ability it is? The spirit turtle replied, The divine ability I will teach you has a long history. It's called No Trace of Head and Tail. No trace of head and tail? Indeed, I will take a piece of my own turtle shell and use a supreme technique to place it on your back, allowing it to become one with your body. This way, you'll have the same defensive capabilities as me. With my turtle shell, no matter what life-threatening situation you face from now on, all you need to do is shrink your body and hide inside the turtle shell. No matter how powerful other people's techniques are, they won't be able to harm you. What do you think? Isn't this divine ability very powerful? The spirit turtle pridefully asked. It is very powerful. Can this turtle shell be put away normally? Gu Shan carefully asked. The spirit turtle replied, It can't be put away. It's already fused with your body, becoming a part of you. Furthermore, if you have such a powerful turtle shell, why would you need to put it away? Gu Shan couldn't help but imagine the scene of her carrying this turtle shell on her back. Although, I usually have to carry this turtle shell on my back, but with this turtle shell, I can attack anyone I want in battle. As soon as someone tries to attack me, I'll be able to hide inside the turtle shell. It really is no trace of head and tail. How powerful. Powerful my ass. Bastard. If I fight like this, the enemy would probably die from laughter before I even get to the halfway point. At this point, the spirit turtle seemed to have remembered something and spoke regretfully. When the Kirin was about to die, I originally wanted to teach this no trace of head and tail thaumaturgy to him. After all, I was the closest to him, but after it heard me explain this divine ability, it refused to accept my divine ability no matter what. In the end, its injuries were too severe, and it died. I really don't understand what he was thinking. Gu Shan solemnly spoke. Senior, regardless of what others think, I feel that this thaumaturgy of yours is truly powerful. This humble one is truly in awe. The spirit turtle joyfully spoke. Not bad. Youngster, you truly have good eyes. Gu Shan solemnly replied. But I once swore a vow to heaven and earth that, as a sword cultivator, the most I can do is to use armor for defense. I cannot use any other means to evade an enemy's attack. Otherwise, I will be killed by the heaven and earth. You're a sword cultivator? No wonder you swore such a vow to heaven and earth. The spirit turtle sighed regretfully. Then there's no other way. You can't accept this thaumaturgy of mine. Gu Qing Shan clasped her fist. Senior, aren't there two ways to enter the barren cloud heavenly palace? We could try the second method. The spirit turtle nodded. Indeed, if you can't accept my thaumaturgy, you naturally won't be able to survive my battle against the vermilion bird. We can only try the second method. This humble one is willing to hear the details, Gu Qing Shan said. The spirit turtle explained. The second method is the entrance test that the master of the heavenly palace set up all those years ago. You must accept the entrance test as a pure newcomer. Only after passing can you enter the sect, it sighed and added. This is an extremely strict test. I can't help you at all. If you can't pass, you'll be killed by the lock seals right away. I'm willing to give it a try, Gu Qing Shan replied. Very well, then give it a try, the spirit turtle replied. It then spat out a jade disc from its mouth. This is the jade disc for the entrance test. The yellow dragon, Kirin, Phoenix, and myself each have one. Take this jade disc to the Mountain Guardian Pavilion. The Kirin's remnant soul won't trouble you. It will send you into the test. The jade disc hovered in the air before lightly landing in Gu Qing Shan's hand. Gu Qing Shan clasped her fist. Thank you, Senior, the spirit turtle replied. If you pass the test, you will be able to enter the barren cloud heavenly palace as an official disciple. I'll be waiting for you there. All right, then I'll be going, Gu Qing Shan said. Go. Be careful, the spirit turtle told her. Gu Qing Shan nodded, turned around, and flew above the sea of clouds. The spirit turtle stared at his figure and silently sighed. How regretful. If this brat could accept my thaumaturgy, would he still need to go through this trial of life and death? Chapter 796. Gu Qing Shan poked his head out from the sea of clouds. There was a large rock at the end of his vision. This rock was very familiar. This was the feeding garden. Gu Qing Shan's current position was already past where the yellow dragon was, very close to the mountain and the palace. He leapt up from the clouds, turning into a blurred image as he flew towards the faraway mountain. After about half an incense stick's worth of time, he could see the outline of a pavilion. The mountain guarding pavilion. The Kirin was sleeping inside the pavilion. Boundless pressure was exuding from its body. To deal with Gu Qing Shan, it only needed a glance. It was hard to imagine that this was only a remnant soul. Gu Qing Shan took out the jade disc that the spirit tortoise gave him and held it in his hand. Sure enough, when he approached the pavilion this time, the Kirin didn't look up, only turned around and changed into a more comfortable posture. Gu Qing Shan landed inside the pavilion. He clasped his fist and was about to say something, but the Kirin abruptly slammed its claw on the ground. Thin silver threads appeared from the ground, forming countless mystical runes. The formation was formed. The entire pavilion began to glow in a blinding light. Sha! In a flash, the light shot up to the sky, enveloping Gu Qing Shan and disappearing without a trace. Complete darkness. Gu Qing Shan opened his eyes and looked around. It's all right. The dark figure of light isn't here. This means that I'm not dead yet. There was no wind. The air was still and fragrant, as if something similar to a tranquilizing spirit incense had been burned here a while ago. Spirit energy could be faintly seen coming from the ground, silently spreading throughout the entire space. This was a spirit funnel formation, a long-lost sense of peace and tranquility. This environment gave off a very similar feeling to a cultivator's cave. Gu Qing Shan reached his hand out and casually formed a hand seal. Light radiated from his finger, illuminating the surroundings. A cushion made from spirit silk was placed in the middle of the room. Next to it was a formation plate, as well as several white jade tags. A spirit spring flowed silently at the far side of the cave abode. The jade couch was on the other side of the spring. Gu Qing Shan retracted his gaze and confirmed his guess. This was indeed a cultivator's abode. He suddenly felt that something was wrong. His cultivation seemed to be unbelievably high. Immediately, he made another hand seal. The spiritual light gathered and formed a mirror. Gu Qing Shan looked at herself in the mirror with a shocked expression. This was not his face. Suddenly, Gu Qing Shan felt a sharp pain in her head, and she almost fell to the ground. The pain disappeared as quickly as it came. In a few breaths, all the pain disappeared as if it had never appeared. Gu Qingshan found that there was an additional piece of information in her mind. Shenyang. Adepts. Baron Cloud, Heavenly Palace. Head disciple. Ranked 3rd. From the moment he entered the sect, he had displayed his peerless talent in martial arts, stunning everyone. He kept thinking about martial arts skills day and night, thinking when he was eating, thinking when he was sleeping, and staying in the martial arts practice field for several days at a time. He would only rest when he was physically exhausted. He was so obsessed with martial arts that he was given the title of martial arts fanatic. In the end, Shenyang managed to pass all the tests and became the most outstanding martial arts seat of the sect. He became a disciple of the Baron Cloud, Heavenly Palace's palace master, and became the last disciple. At this point, the title of martial arts fanatic resounded everywhere. In Gu Qingshan's mind, pieces of information about Shenyang appeared one after another. But these were only the most important events in Shenyang's life, as well as the people he came into contact with the most. As for the small details of his daily life, they were also fully displayed in Gu Qingshan's mind. Even his understanding of martial arts cultivation was complete. With this memory of Shenyang, Gu Qingshan even had the same level of martial arts experience and skills as Shenyang. If he could return at this point, this memory would most likely become his most precious treasure. But the most important thing right now is how I'm going to pass the test. If I can't pass the test, I won't be able to enter the Heavenly Palace. While Gu Qingshan was thinking about his current situation, a gentle light appeared from the void of space. As Gu Qingshan looked at the light, a certain piece of information appeared in his mind. He understood right away. Someone is here to visit. Gu Qingshan took a deep breath and forced his expression to calm down. From now on, I'm going to act as Shenyang. I can't afford to make any mistakes. 1 breath, 2 breaths. Gu Qingshan regained his composure, reached his hand out, and formed a hand seal according to Shenyang's memories. The light turned into a door that opened in front of Gu Qingshan. A man with a sword on his back came in from the door. The man reported, "Junior brother, Shifu has urgently summoned us, according to Shenyang's memories." Gu Qingshan doubtfully asked, "Eldest brother, didn't Shifu leave to participate in this year's banquet of the divinities?" Indeed, the man in front of him was the eldest disciple of the sect master, the sword cultivator Zhao Quan. Gu Qingshan looked at him, feeling a bit regretful that he didn't obtain his memories. The sword cultivator techniques of the age of old. Just thinking about it was enough to make one's heart beat faster. Zhao Quan replied, "I'm not sure, but something seems to have happened. Shifu wants us to hurry." Got it, Gu Qingshan immediately replied. He followed Zhao Quan out of the cave and flew towards the peak of Baron Cloud, Heavenly Palace. While flying, Gu Qingshan couldn't help but look down from above. The entire mountain range was filled with light. Cultivators were riding the wind. All of them had expressions of excitement and calmness on their faces. Indeed, this was the end of the year. Everyone could stop their cultivation and gather together to celebrate the new year. The divinities would also organize a grand banquet at this time, inviting the most outstanding cultivators to the banquet. Gu Qingshan looked further away. The ground was filled with bright lights and people. Just outside the sect, Gu Qingshan saw a few bustling markets. Occasionally, streaks of light could be seen flying through the dark night sky. They were airships. Other than that, there were also many giant warships with bright lights. Many cultivators gathered on them, drinking spirit liquor, feasting on heavenly delicacies, singing and dancing, discussing Tao, competing in spells and techniques. Men and women could be seen walking side by side, or large groups of people could be seen flying through the sky, playing and chasing each other. What a lively scene! Gu Qingshan sighed and looked away. They had arrived at the peak of the mountain. This was where the Heavenly Palace's master was. A cultivator with a short blade was already waiting for them at the gate. This was Shenyang's second brother, a spell user, Huangzhan. The dagger in his hand wasn't used to charge and kill, but rather, it was a magic blade used to cast spells. "First brother, third brother, you're here," Huangzhan said. Gu Qingshan replied. "Let's go in. Master is waiting for us," Zhao Quan said. The three of them pushed the door open. Inside the palace, A white-haired cultivator wearing a black robe stood with his back to the three of them, his hands clasped behind his back. A simple and unadorned longsword was floating quietly in front of him. Seeing that sword, Gu Qingshan's heart almost jumped out of her throat. The Earth Sword. This was the Earth Sword. Master, the other two disciples bowed. Gu Qingshan also bowed. The Barren Cloud Palace's master sighed, a bit sorrowful, but didn't say anything. The three disciples exchanged glances. They all had confused expressions on their faces. Master has always been a great strategist, always in high spirits. So why is he like this today? There was silence. The atmosphere in the palace was becoming more and more strange. Finally, first brother Zhao Quan couldn't help but ask, Master, didn't you go to the banquet? Why did you return so soon? And why did you sigh? The Barren Cloud Palace's master pointed at the Earth Sword. Its wounded Zhao Quan was shocked. This sword was forged by Master using countless resources, 9 venerables of the Heaven Realm, to forge it for a total of 81 days. Who could possibly hurt it? The Barren Cloud Palace's master uttered 2 words. Measure God. Measure God was one of the divinities known to control the situation and future of all living beings. Huang Zhan was surprised. The divinities have always been kind to all living beings. Why would they hurt Master's sword? The Barren Cloud Palace's master replied, During today's banquet, I sparred with Measure God. I used this sword to win against Measure God by half a move, but I didn't want to anger the divinities and injure this sword with their full power. The palace master abruptly turned around and told his 3 disciples, It was all my fault for acting rashly and causing such a calamity. The sect destruction is only a matter of time. Zhao Quan, Huang Zhan, Shun Yang, you are my direct disciples. I order you to immediately escape from Barren Cloud Heavenly Palace and hide your identities in the lower realms, preserving a seed of the sect's inheritance. The other grand elders are doing the same thing. You will leave tonight. The 3 disciples panicked. Master, the divinities wouldn't. How could this be? It was only a competition. Why would our sect be? They all tried to console their master. The Barren Cloud Palace's master shouted, All of you, shut up. The 3 of them went silent. The Barren Cloud Palace's master spoke. Zhao Quan. This disciple is here. Zhao Quan knelt down and bowed. The Barren Cloud Palace master continued. You were the first to enter the sect, but your swordsmanship has yet to reach great accomplishment. I will now entrust all of the sect's scriptures and scriptures to you. After you descend to the lower realms, you cannot be distracted by anything. You must study the sect's various swordsmanship and strive to establish your own sect in the lower realms as soon as possible to continue our legacy. Yes, Zhao Quan replied. The Barren Cloud Palace master continued. Huang Zhan, among the 3 of us, your mastery of spells is the highest. I want you to protect the Earth Sword and bring it to the lower realms. Hide from this commotion and wait for an opportunity later on. Huang Zhan couldn't help but ask, Master, this sword is your personal sword. I'll take it with me. What will you use? The Barren Cloud Palace master solemnly replied, I can use any sword, but the Earth Sword cannot be harmed again. It carries a secret related to the fate of humanity as a whole. It is the final hope of humanity. You must protect it well. Yes, Master, Huang Zhan solemnly replied. The Barren Cloud Palace master then turned to Gu Qingshan and said, Shenyang, your thoughts are usually the purest, so your master has a personal matter to entrust to you. Gu Qingshan replied. Please instruct me. Master, the Barren Cloud Palace master continued. The divinities said that my daughter was born with a defect and was destined to not live past the age of 7. It was only later that I found out that because she was born with a golden lotus that stole the fortune of heaven and earth, the divinities were jealous of her and placed a curse on her. Together with all the great cultivators of the heaven realm, we finally came up with a method that would allow her to avoid the curse and prolong her life. Unfortunately, this method of ours would require several 100,000 years to slowly dispel the curse of the divinities and allow her to awaken from this ice crystal. He raised his hand and summoned a large ice crystal. Gu Qingshan looked at the ice crystal. Inside the ice crystal, millions of spirit jade flowers were gathered around a golden lotus. On top of the golden lotus, a young girl with a pure and innocent face was peacefully sleeping. Gu Shan then looked at the spirit jade flowers. These flowers were divided into two types. One was the flower of true spirit. The other was a flower carved from spirit jade. According to Shun Yang's memories, even in the heaven realm, each of these flowers of true spirit were rare treasures. The flowers carved from spirit jade were engraved with runes, and it was clear that they were some kind of extremely profound formation. Inside the ice crystal, strands of light came from the spirit jade flowers, mixed with the 7-colored light from the flowers of true spirit, and slowly entered the young girl's body. This is my daughter. She might only awaken after several 10,000 years. I probably won't be able to see her again in my lifetime. Shenyang, take her to the lower realm and take care of her for me. The barren cloud palace master looked at the young girl inside the ice crystal. His expression became gentle and nostalgic. Chapter 797. Xia, Dao, Ling, I'll remember this name. Gu Shan looked at the little girl sealed inside the ice crystal and solemnly clasped her fist. Don't worry, Shifu. As long as I'm alive, I will definitely protect her, the barren cloud palace master nodded. He was very pleased with this disciple of his. With a flip of his hand, the floating ice crystal disappeared without a trace. Instead, a crystal-clear ring of ice appeared in his hand. This is the Heaven's Paradise Ring, connected to a small world where she hibernates. There's nothing else in that small world other than 81 spirit stone mountains specifically for her ice crystal to replenish spirit energy. The barren cloud palace master carefully rubbed the ring of ice in his hand, sighed, and gave it to Shenyang. Shenyang solemnly received the ring of ice and put it on his arm. Huangzhan looked at the ring of ice, then at Shenyang with a worried expression. Zhao Quan glanced at the ring of ice and lowered his head. At this point, the barren cloud palace master told his 3 disciples, Go to the bottom of the heavenly palace. The sect has prepared a world breaker airship there. It's best if you split up. Also, for safety's sake, cut off contact with each other after descending. Quickly go. Seeing how the 3 of them were still hesitating, the palace master angrily shouted, The sect destruction is only a matter of time. Each of you is shouldering my heavy responsibility. Do you still want to stand here and wait for death? Quickly. Otherwise, I won't be able to rest in peace. The 3 hurriedly replied, Yes, Shifu. Huangzhan couldn't hold it in anymore, roared to vent his anger, and rushed out of the door. Zhao Quan hurriedly chased after him. Gu Shan told the barren cloud palace master with a serious expression, Take care, Shifu. If there's no other choice, compromising to save your own life is also a choice. The palace master didn't get angry this time, and only looked at him with a smile. You fool. Do I need you to teach me? Scram. Gu Shan clasped his fist and left. The 3 disciples finally left the heavenly palace. The door closed. The palace master silently stood there. A figure hovering in the air appeared in front of him. It was an old man with white hair and beard. Immortal King, the barren cloud palace master, clasped his fist. The old man nodded, asking in confusion, Sect Master Xia, you originally intended to pass the position to Shenyang. Why did you pass it to Zhao Quan in the end? The palace lord sighed softly and said, Zhao Quan is meticulous and thoughtful in all aspects of his work. The only flaw is that his 5 desires are too strong, and his Taoist heart is slightly flawed, so his swordsmanship can't reach great heights. Since that's the case, I might as well let him go down to the lower realm to establish his own sect and pass on the torch. Huangzhan is an excellent spellcaster, an honest and trustworthy person, as well as a person who can keep secrets, so I'm very assured leaving the earth sword to him. A complicated look appeared on the palace master's face. As for Shenyang, if he didn't have great wisdom and determination, how could he have given up on worldly affairs and focused solely on cultivation? Shenyang is naturally the best choice for the sect's leader, but the situation has changed. The divinities are trying to harm us, and we are about to retaliate. At this time, it's best to hide him away. not burdened by the sect, not disturbed by anything, continuing to focus on a martial path. Perhaps in the future, he will be able to surpass all of us, the old man sighed. I actually hope that he will be able to surpass us and defeat the divinities. That way I won't have to work so hard to arrange for his funeral, the palace master smiled bitterly. I'm confident that he will be able to surpass me, but to surpass you, immortal king, that will depend on his own luck at another location. Following his memory, Gu Shan was flying down to the foot of the heavenly palace mountain. He was a bit confused. What exactly am I doing right now? Or rather, will what I'm doing right now actually affect the age of old? If I really did return to the age of old and replace Xinyang, would everything I'm doing change the entire future? Everything that happened in the last several 10,000 years would change. That's a bit too unimaginable. Gu Shan went silent for a bit, then silently shook his head. According to what I've seen so far, in this current era, humanity's power should have only just reached the point where it could threaten the status of the divinities. And he knows that the power of the divinities can't reshape time. If that's the case, humanity wouldn't be able to either. Which means my current situation is most likely the same as a real event that happened in history. I'm currently Xinyang. If that's the test, then the test goal is probably to see how much better I can do compared to Xinyang. Gu Shan thought about it again and confirmed this point. At this point, he had reached the foot of the mountain range. Numerous gray airships were parked here, each of them engraved with unique world breaker runes. Activating these airships would allow one to directly break through the limits of the world and travel from the heaven realm to the other worlds of the samsara. According to the different runes engraved on the airships, some would directly travel to the Azura realm, while others would travel to the human realm. Heaven, human, and Azura were the upper three realms, so cultivators who wanted to travel through the Worldbreaker realm would only choose between these three realms. As for the Wraith realm, Beast realm, and Huang Quan realm, they were the lower three realms that no one would be willing to travel to. At this point, several elders were already making arrangements here. Quite a few young cultivators of the sect were given airships by them. As soon as an airship was full, the leading cultivator would activate the airship to break through the void of space and escape to another world. One of the elders noticed the three of them. So, it's the three of you come, these are your airships. The elder led them to three small-sized airships. Each of you has your own mission, so the sect has arranged for each of you to take your own airships. The first is Zhao Quan's, the second is Huang Zhan's, and the one at the very end is Shun Yang's. Make sure you don't take the wrong one, boom. While they were talking, the ground trembled. A resounding voice resounded from far above. Barren cloud, heavenly palace, disrespecting the divinities, plotting to join the desolate world. Your crimes are punishable by death. A glorious light descended from above, illuminating the entire night sky. The elder's expression changed and shouted, "Hurry! Leave!" His figure flashed and disappeared from the trio's sight. The three of them didn't hesitate and boarded their own airships. Zhou Quan threw 2 J-tag to Huang Zhan and Gu Shan. He spoke quickly, "Junior brother Huang, junior brother Shun, once we descend to the lower realm, our original communication talismans can no longer be used. Keep this jade slip, it can sense our location. We'll meet again when we descend to the lower realm." Huang Zhan nodded and put the jade tag away. Gu Shan also put the jade tag away into her inventory bag. Time was of the essence, so the three of them didn't say anything else and activated the formation on the airship. The airship let out a sharp, screeching noise as it broke through the void of space and headed towards the lower realm. The space vortex. Another space vortex. As soon as the airship broke through the void, Gu Shan watched as the other 2 airships headed in different directions. Seems like the 3 airships were heading to different locations. He carefully observed his surroundings. Within the gray space vortex, the wind continued to blow. This was a space that belonged to the outside world, so any strange existence could appear here. But the space vortex of this era wasn't the same as the future. Besides the wind, Gu Shan didn't see anything out of the ordinary. Perhaps it was because of the frequent wars in the heaven realm. all kinds of unknown existences had already avoided this space. Gu Qingshan slowly calmed down. Taking advantage of this last bit of peace, he sat down cross-legged and began to meditate. All of Xun Yang's martial arts went through his mind one by one. Gu Qingshan began to think about how to use his martial arts to attack. He wanted to infuse Xun Yang's martial arts into his own fighting style. Time slowly passed. While Gu Qingshan was silently analyzing his martial arts, an airship appeared. The flying boat seemed to be startled as well. It circled around cautiously for a while before approaching. Gu Qingshan stood up and looked at the airship. The airship looked familiar. The person on it was even more familiar. Eldest brother? Gu Qingshan was surprised. What a coincidence. Third brother. It seems the direction we're heading to is quite close, Zhao Quan commented. Gu Qingshan smiled. That's great. As long as we brothers are together, there shouldn't be anything in the human realm that could stop us. Zhao Quan also smiled and replied. I was thinking the same thing. How about I put my own airship away and stay on yours? We'll land together later. Gu Qingshan happily agreed. That's how it should be. Zhao Quan put his airship away and leapt towards Gu Qingshan's airship. Gu Qingshan tapped his inventory bag and took out the jade tag. Senior brother, I won't need this jade tag anymore. I'll return it to you. He tossed the jade tag to Zhao Quan. Zhao Quan narrowed his eyes as he looked at the jade tag. It was indeed the jade tag he gave out just now. It was to allow fellow disciples to sense each other's location. Very well. I won't be needing this jade tag anymore. Zhao Quan chuckled and caught the jade tag. Something happened. Sha. The jade tag suddenly disappeared as Xun Yang appeared in front of Zhao Quan. Divine skill, shadow shift. As soon as Xun Yang appeared, he grabbed Zhao Quan's hand. Zhao Quan's expression changed, but his body suddenly went numb, unable to move at all. His spirit energy was no longer under his control. Severance. At this point, Xun Yang's fist struck Zhao Quan's body. In a split second, he struck Zhao Quan several times in a row, causing the light around his body to scatter and all of his defenses to collapse. Zhao Quan roared without stopping, but didn't even have a chance to resist. When the 3 seconds were about to end, from the void of space, a woman with a cold expression appeared with a sword in hand. The woman thrust her sword forward. Severance. The sword that Zhao Quan spent so much effort to summon fell into the space vortex and disappeared without a trace. He once again lost control of his body. Another iron fist. Xun Yang's expression was expressionless as he continued to punch Zhao Quan with all his strength. At this point, Zhao Quan's defenses were completely broken, leaving him powerless to use any other defensive or life-saving measures. Taking this chance, Xun Yang crushed every single bone and joint in Zhao Quan's body. The final kick. Dong! Zhao Quan was sent flying. Xun Yang disappeared, reappeared in the space vortex far away, caught Zhao Quan, dragged him back, and threw him onto the spirit airship. Zhao Quan was now powerless to resist. He spat up some blood and shouted, Xun Yang, you've betrayed your master. Betray my master? Gu Qingshan softly asked. That's right. Master appointed me as the next heavenly palace master, yet you ambushed me when I wasn't paying attention. Did you want to be the next palace master? Zhao Quan shouted. Gu Qingshan slowly crouched down in front of him and shook her head. You're the one who betrayed your master, aren't you? Zhao Quan angrily shouted. Bullshit. I, Zhao Quan, have always been loyal to the sect. I've never been disloyal. Don't you dare slander me. Gu Qingshan smiled and softly asked, Then let me ask you. Master clearly told us to split up and for safety's sake to cut off contact with each other after descending to the lower realms. Why did you give me a communication jade tag? Zhao Quan froze. Gu Qingshan continued. Let's take a step back. If you and I were heading in the same direction, why would the sect arrange for 3 separate airships? Wouldn't that be an unnecessary move? He sighed. Senior Brother Huang was an honest and loyal man. Under the sudden change of events, his mind was shaken, and seeing that you were his senior brother, he wasn't careful enough to fall into your trap. Zhao Quan. Zhao Quan, do you really think I'm as gullible as Senior Brother Huang? Chapter 798. On the airship, Zhao Quan was completely restrained, leaning against the side of the ship. Aren't you going to tell me what you think? Gu Qingshan asked. Zhao Quan decided to keep his mouth shut. Then I'm sorry, Gu Qingshan regretfully said. I have no choice but to do it myself. Gu Qingshan reached her hand out and lightly placed it on Zhao Quan's forehead. Soul reading, activate. A flash of light appeared on Zhao Quan's forehead, knocking Gu Qingshan's hand away. A golden mystical rune appeared on Zhao Quan's forehead, exuding a faint dignified presence. This was divine script. Zhao Quan spat up a mouthful of blood and laughed. Xinyang, you want to search my soul? Dream on. Gu Qingshan's expression changed and shouted in a low voice. So you've submitted to the divinities. You're already the sect's strongest, the next sect master. Why would you do this? Zhao Quan cursed. Sect master my ass. Master only wants me to continue the sect's flame. He wants me to work day and night for the sect, he suddenly shouted. He didn't even teach me the art of sword saint. He didn't even teach me the art of sword saint. Xinyang, can you understand what I'm feeling? Every time I see a sword saint using a flying sword, I can only fight with a sword in hand. And I'm the sect master's eldest disciple. Everyone is looking at me, but I still have to maintain a calm expression. You can't understand what I'm feeling. Gu Qingshan paused, then slowly explained. To become a sword saint, you must find your own path. No one can teach you, because that path is someone else's. Don't you understand this? Zhao Quan replied. I understand, of course I understand, but it's been 30 years, Xinyang. It's been 30 years. My cultivation has been constantly rising, surpassing all my peers, but I still can't become a sword saint. Do you understand this feeling? I understand, Gu Qingshan replied. Zhao Quan screamed. You don't understand. Everyone says that I, Zhao Quan, am busy with the sect's affairs every day, so I've neglected my cultivation, but they don't know how hard I've been cultivating, but I can't. He really couldn't. I tried countless times, but I couldn't control the sword with my heart no matter what. I even destroyed the original sword and changed to a new one, but it still didn't work. Sword destruction. Gu Qingshan could not help but frown upon hearing this. Zhao Quan replied, Xinyang, I am a sword cultivator, and the path of a sword cultivator rejects all other paths. That's why I can't cultivate any other techniques. Do you know how many times I've wanted to die? He suddenly laughed. Blood streamed down his face, making him look ferocious and crazy. Later, I couldn't stand it anymore. I went to the gods and prayed to them. Guess what happened? The whole process was so simple that it was beyond my imagination. I learned sword manipulation right away. Gu Qingshan continued. That's why you joined the divinities, that's right. I don't care about the sect at all. I'm now under the orders of God. Today, I will destroy everything in Barren Cloud Heavenly Palace. Those disciples from before, Huangzhan, you, and the sect master's daughter, none of you will escape. Gu Qingshan's heart tightened. She quickly asked, What about the disciples from before? What did you do? Zhao Quan appeared prideful. I'm the eldest brother of the sect. So many things have to go through me. Can you guess how I arranged this? Gu Qingshan stared at him with a bit of sadness in her heart. The cultivation world of the future was so weak that they didn't even know about the creation of a new world, so they were always at a disadvantage against the demons. If any of these disciples from the heaven realm managed to escape, the cultivation world of the future wouldn't have ended up like that. It seems that even if the real Xinyang managed to escape, he wouldn't have been able to survive for too long. Otherwise, his martial arts would have definitely been passed down. Zhao Quan purposefully spoke emotionally. Just you wait. The gods have sent many subordinates to kill those disciples. Not a single one of them will be able to escape Xinyang. I've already given the earth sword to them. The gods were overjoyed and granted me the power of life protection. Even if I die here, my soul will return to the gods. I really have to say, everything you've done was for naught. As Gu Qingshan looked at him, she suddenly felt a surge of emotions. That's not it, Gu Qingshan calmly replied. He took out a scepter from the void of space. The Devil King Wardenrod. He raised the scepter up high. Down. Stab. Zhao Quan was pierced through by the scepter. his body twitching and struggling on the ground. Gu Shan held the scepter down. Blood. It was spreading in all directions. Gu Shan's voice became cold, speaking in a low voice. Can you feel it? The pain of betraying everyone. Don't give me that. Zhao Quan breathed heavily. After I resurrect, I'll beg the gods to take your soul and torture you for eternity. Gu Shan went silent. He sighed. Zhao Quan, seeing as you're about to die, I'll tell you a bit more. In truth, what you're pursuing isn't swordsmanship, but rather the power and fame that the power of the sword can bring you after you become a sword saint. If you're truly pursuing swordsmanship, you wouldn't have broken your own sword, nor would you have begged the gods for power. A sword cultivator wouldn't pursue power from the outside like that. The power of the sword must come from your heart. This power can only be ignited by your will. Hearing that, Zhao Quan coughed up some blood, breathing heavily as he tried to speak. Are you worthy to teach me? He shook his head in disdain. Gu Shan looked at him without moving. Two flying swords silently appeared from the void of space behind him. Flying swords. Zhao Quan opened his eyes wide, stunned, unable to accept what he was seeing. Zhao Quan, don't learn swordsmanship in your next life, Gu Shan said. He held the Devil King Warden rod tightly and stabbed forward. Zhao Quan coughed up the last bit of blood and unwillingly lost his life. All of a sudden, a golden light erupted from his body. Countless golden divine runes surrounded his body, forming a mystical pattern. The golden light exploded and lifted the body up. As Zhao Quan's body was about to disappear from the airship, Gu Shan put his hand on the Devil King Warden rod and activated Soul Dispersion. Scepter's secret art. Soul Dispersion. Secret art description. The Devil King can use the power of the scepter to permanently kill any disobedient dead. The souls of those killed will disperse and turn into the scepter's power. Boom. A black light shot out from the scepter and entered Zhao Quan's body. At the same time, the golden light erupted. The two forces began to clash. Obviously, the golden light was no match for the black light and was quickly devoured by it. Gu Shan's eyebrows twitched as she saw this. The samsara was truly the greatest achievement of the old gods. The Devil King Warden rod was able to suppress the power of divine runes. Instantly, the golden light faded away as the wind swept by. The scepter had obtained the right to deal with the body. A faint figure appeared in front of Gu Shan. Zhao Quan. He had a shocked expression, staring at the scepter in Gu Shan's hand, completely speechless. I'm sorry, I was wrong. You don't need to think about what to cultivate in your next life. Gu Shan tapped the scepter on Zhao Quan's soul. Because you don't have a next life. The soul let out a shrill scream as it was completely crushed and absorbed by the scepter. A faint sizzling sound could be heard from inside the Devil King Warden rod, as if it was chewing. Gu Shan ignored it and casually put it back. Zhao Quan was dead. Gu Shan searched his body, but didn't find any inventory bags. There was only a jade disc and a warp formation that Zhao Quan carefully hid close to his body. This formation was exactly the same as the primordial heaven realm warp formation on Gu Shan's body. Gu Shan looked at the jade disc. Seems like this was the Heavenly Palace's sect master's protective jade disc. So this was how Shen Yang obtained the jade disc and the warp formation. But he must have gone through an even more intense battle. While Gu Shan was thinking, a furious roar resounded from deep within the space vortex. A blinding golden light illuminated the void of space, slowly approaching from deep within the space vortex. This was the might of a divinity. Gu Shan looked at Zhao Quan's body. The divinity's pursuit must have something to do with Zhao Quan's body. As Gu Shan was about to throw the body into the space vortex, a sword phantom descended from the void of space and fell to the ground. The Earth Sword. Xinyan, you're not bad. Hurry and catch me. I'll take you away. The Earth Sword's heavy voice resounded. Gu Shan couldn't help but grab the Earth Sword. Chapter 799. Gu Shan opened his eyes. He found himself standing in the middle of a ruined wall. There were ruined buildings all around him, stretching from the foot of the mountain all the way to the top. A few palaces that hadn't collapsed yet still gave off a faint glow. Their colors were beautiful and luxurious, but they didn't lose their elegance. Obviously, they were protected by a simple dust removal formation. The dust removal formation only needed to absorb the world's spirit energy to operate, so it was perfectly preserved in the long river of history. Gu Qingshan pulled his gaze back. At some unknown point, a young man was already standing in front of him, curiously observing him. "If I may," Gu Qingshan clasped his fist. "No need to ask. I'm the spirit tortoise. You still can't recognize me?" the young man replied. Gu Qingshan glanced at the tortoise shell on his back and nodded. "Senior." The young man cut him off. "What senior? I'm only 150,000 years old this year. I'm still young, so you can call me Young Tortoise, or Young Tortoise, which sounds better." Gu Qingshan, Young Tortoise, tossed something to him. "You did well, even better than Shun Yang. So you've passed the test and won the Disciple Jade Disc," Young Tortoise said. Gu Qingshan looked at the jade disc in his hand. The jade disc contained an astonishing amount of spirit energy, giving off a faint white mist in his hand. The shape of this spirit jade was a bit strange. It looked like a broken rune. "All right, no need to look at it. Because you've passed the entrance test, you can now cultivate as a disciple of Barren Cloud Heavenly Palace," Young Tortoise told him. "Cultivate?" Gu Qingshan was surprised. "But I'm here to find the Heaven Sword, I know." Young Tortoise looked at him with a solemn gaze. "You're too weak. You can't obtain the Heaven Sword, so you can only cultivate first. For cultivators like you who have returned to the Heavenly Palace, this is actually the best opportunity of your life. You'll be able to study the best scriptures of that era and quickly become stronger. Then what realm do I need to cultivate to find a Heaven Sword?" Gu Qingshan pursued. "Since it's a Disciple Jade Disc, you must become the best disciple of that generation to have the chance to find the Heaven Sword," Young Tortoise replied. He reached out and lightly tapped the jade disc. Invisible ripples spread out in all directions from the jade disc. Young Turtle said, "Remember, even though there was a phantom image from the age of old, the laws of the world are interlinked. You can bring the power you obtained through cultivation back here. What should I do?" Gu Qingshan asked. Young Tortoise shook his head and smiled. "You have to enter the Barren Cloud Heavenly Palace first. I might not be able to enter the Heavenly Palace?" Gu Qingshan was confused. Young Tortoise didn't mind. "You can also find the Heaven Sword if you join other sects, so don't worry. Even if you can't obtain the qualification to search for the Heaven Sword in the end, you will still benefit greatly from this experience." Gu Qingshan was about to speak when the jade disc suddenly shone brightly. It brought Gu Qingshan into the void and slowly disappeared. The spiritual power was as refreshing as a light breeze. The mountains in the distance were as beautiful as ink, and the forest was verdant. There was a small bridge over the lake, and the lake was shrouded in mist. The first glimmer of dawn. Children dressed in clean and tidy clothes lined up in front of a Taoist temple, waiting for the sect selection. Every child would be qualified to cultivate. Even if some people didn't have spirit roots, the divinities would grant them spirit herbs to plant a spirit root that could resonate with the 5 elements. No one would be wasted. The divinities needed a large number of people to fight, and humanity also desired to become stronger. This was the best era. Gu Qingshan opened his hands and looked at them. He didn't know whether to laugh or cry. His hands were now white and tender, as if they hadn't even been touched by cold water. In fact, he was currently a child around 6 to 7 years old. He was standing in a line, waiting for the sect selection together with the other children. His cultivation had returned to 0. Right now, he could only faintly sense spirit energy from the void of space, and his dantian was already empty. Fortunately, he still brought his thaumaturgy and swords with him. His memories and fighting experience weren't taken away. During this strange experience, he was fortunate that his inner self wasn't changed at all. Gu Qingshan silently stood in the line, waiting for the time to pass. Not too long later, someone shouted from afar, "Squad 5 to 9, enter the Taoist temple." Gu Qingshan followed the other children into the Taoist temple. As soon as he entered, his field of vision became clear. The entire Taoist temple was spacious enough to hold several thousand people. The center of the square was empty for the children to display their talents. The various sects each took a corner of the square. In the sky above the square, there were a few hundred five-colored clouds hovering, roughly a few hundred in total. These clouds hovered motionlessly in the sky. A cultivator smiled at the children and spoke with a gentle voice. From left to right, step forward one by one. Begin. Everyone turned to the first child on the left. The child had never seen such a grand scene before, so he gulped nervously and stood still, not daring to move. Finally, under the urging of several cultivators, he ran forward and stood in the middle of the square. Very quickly, a five-colored cloud descended and enveloped the child. A few moments later, a short rod descended from the sky, silently hovering next to the child. As the sect elders saw this, they all glanced over. One of the elders smiled and stood up, waving to the child. "Come, child, you've received our sect's spirit summoning rod. You'll become a spirit summoner in the future." The child grabbed the short stick and ran towards the old man with joy. Following him, the second child stepped forward. As he stood in the middle of the square, three colorful clouds began to descend items: a staff, a short blade, and a fan. The elders of the three sects looked at him attentively. The little boy stood there in a daze, not knowing which one to choose. The cultivator in charge of the ceremony pointed out, "Just pick the one that you want in your heart." The boy grabbed the short blade and excitedly swung it a few times. The staff and fan immediately flew up and returned to the colorful cloud where they originally belonged. An old man called out, "Come, you've received our sect's law blade. From now on, you're our sect's disciple." The little boy held the dagger and ran towards the sect elder. The selection continued. The third child stepped forward. He was surrounded by 8 formation plates. It took him a while to pick one. Another elder took him away. The fourth child was a young girl. As she stood in the middle of the square, her body began to give off a blue light. Several dozen colorful clouds gave off their light and enveloped her. Almost 60 tools descended and silently hovered in front of her. The sect elders began to whisper to each other. They began to fight over who this girl should belong to. The cultivator in charge of the ceremony was very experienced, so he asked the young girl, "You can choose now. Do you have a sect you like?" The young girl nodded. Profound Water Sect. Profound Water Sect was the sect with the strongest water elemental spells. They were once personally taught by the water god, so they were a very famous sect. The discussion quickly died down. A beautiful woman in royal dress smiled and waved at the young girl. The young girl glanced at the cultivator in charge, received permission, and happily ran towards the beautiful woman. The fifth child stepped forward. 11 colorful clouds gave off a light that enveloped him. Various armored gauntlets descended from the sky and landed in front of him. This was a sign of martial arts talent. The young boy carefully picked out a glowing red flame elemental gauntlet. Immediately, the other gauntlets returned to the colorful clouds. A burly man stepped forward and led the child into his sect. Next was Gu Qingshan's turn. He silently stepped forward and stood in the middle of the square. A strange fluctuation appeared between heaven and earth. This invisible fluctuation silently melded into his mind, searching for something. Sensing this fluctuation, Gu Qingshan was very curious. There wasn't such a wondrous method in the future that could directly help people determine what they were most proficient in. The spirit tortoise said that it didn't matter which sect she joined, as she would always have a chance to search for the Heaven Sword. But from what happened just now, the Heavenly Palace's palace master was a powerful sword cultivator. The Heavenly Palace's palace master once won against a divinity by half a move. Gu Qingshan looked up at the sky, only to see the colorful clouds standing still. "Come, give me a sword." As Gu Qingshan stared at the clouds, she silently thought. A second later, the fluctuation inside her body silently disappeared, only to see the hundreds of colorful clouds trembling. All of a sudden, a sword descended from the sky, lightly standing in front of Gu Qingshan. The sword let out a low woo-woo sound. This seemed to be a signal. The swords descended from the colorful clouds, standing in front of Gu Qingshan. A few moments later, An unbelievable scene appeared. Countless swords lined up in rows, circling around Gu Shan, forming circles that surrounded him. Almost 1,000 swords. They all let out a low woo-woo sound, as if they were waiting for Gu Shan's choice. The children waiting on the side were already shocked. The elders of the sects had already stood up. The cultivator in charge regained his composure and asked, "Child, which sect do you want to join?" Chapter 800. That's right. I want to join Barren Cloud Heavenly Palace, Gu Shan confirmed again. Since he was still a child, his voice was crisp and clear, so everyone could hear him. The cultivator hosting the ceremony smiled. You sure know how to choose. Barren Cloud Heavenly Palace is the first sect of the Heaven Realm. Favored by the divinities, he looked in a certain direction and asked, "What does Barren Cloud Heavenly Palace think?" Everyone else also looked in that direction. In front of everyone, a white-haired old man stood up and spoke with a prideful expression. This child was able to draw 1,000 swords down. It is clear that his heart is pure and righteous, a true seed of swordsmanship. Our heavenly palace naturally has no objection, Shah. A sword flew over and landed in Gu Shan's hand. The other swords let out resounding noises of unwillingness. They all flew back to the sky and disappeared into the colorful clouds. The old man waved his hand at Gu Shan. Come, child, from today onwards, you are a disciple of Barren Cloud Heavenly Palace. Gu Shan held her sword and walked behind the old man. There were already a few children sitting on the ground here, curiously observing him. They were all disciples of this generation who had just joined. Gu Shan moved his lips a bit, then closed them again. It's not a problem for him to act as an uncle and talk to children, but he had already forgotten how to communicate with a group of children on the same level. Should I pretend to be cute? He thought for a bit, then silently shook his head. So he found an empty spot and also sat on the ground, but didn't say anything. He could hear the chatter of the children around him. Brother Zhao, he seems to be very strong, a nervous voice came. What's there to be afraid of? He doesn't eat people. He's just a bit annoying, another voice full of jealousy replied. Don't worry. This Zhao Quan will always take care of you. Cowardly Huang Erlang, my father has already changed my name. I'm now called Huang Zhan, all right. Huang Zhan, I'll protect you in the sect from now on. I'm your big brother after all. Thank you, Brother Zhao. I won't cause any trouble. Idiot. We need to cause trouble. That way others will be afraid of you. Gu Shan opened her eyes and closed them again. The sun gradually darkened. The selection to enter the sect gradually came to an end. The elders of the various sects greeted each other and released their flying boats, bringing their new disciples back to the sects to report. As the airship approached Barren Cloud Heavenly Palace's territory, all the children became excited. They had seen the palace in the sky from the ground, and today he was about to enter this famous sect. Gu Shan looked into the distance. From time to time, there would be streams of light from flying boats coming from all directions. Those flying boats were also filled with many young children. Gu Shan did a rough count. There were already 200 to 300 people on each flying boat. However, this was only a temporary number. While Gu Shan was counting, more and more airships were returning from other locations. Barren Cloud Heavenly Palace had always been very picky when it came to choosing disciples. Even under such circumstances, there were still so many new disciples joining. It seems that humanity was indeed thriving. The airships arrived outside the Heavenly Palace one by one and silently hovered in the air. The elder stood on the airship and explained to the children, "Once everyone has arrived, you will all enter the sect together. If I may ask, Elder, will we be cultivating in the Heavenly Palace from now on?" Zhao Quan stepped forward and cleverly asked. Sure enough, the children all looked at the elder. The elder seemed to have thought of something and chuckled. The Heavenly Palace is the center of the sect. It's normally not open to normal disciples. Zhao Quan was confused. Then the elder said, "There are still a few airships that haven't returned yet. Let's wait until all the airships have arrived." Zhao Quan tactfully kept his mouth shut and returned to the group of children. They boarded their airships and silently hovered in the sky. Time slowly passed. Occasionally, Other airships would return from afar and also hover in the sky, silently waiting for their companions who hadn't returned yet. At this point, the curtain of night had fallen. The starlight in the sky was as vast as the sea. The night wind was silent. Not a single sound could be heard. The last streak of light returned from afar. All the airships had arrived. An old man flew to the sky and clasped his hands, reporting to the palace master, "All the airships have returned. A total of 759 disciples have been accepted this time, 2 breaths worth of time later." A dignified male voice resounded from the void of space. "Open the grotto heaven, as the palace master commands," the old man replied. Their conversation traveled very far in the darkness of the night, so much so that it could be heard everywhere. Hearing that, the children all appeared confused, not understanding what the two of them were talking about. But they soon saw something that they would never forget for the rest of their lives. In the sky, the faint glow of stars filled the sky. The deep blue sky slowly parted, as if a curtain was being pulled back. Above the heavenly palace, there was a river that flowed continuously. The river flowed. Dozens of mountain peaks stood on top of the river. Clouds and mist shrouded the sky. Heavenly beings and cranes flew between the peaks. While it was night outside, it was still daytime here. At a glance, this looked like an overly realistic scene from a dream. "Grotto heaven," Gu Qingshan muttered. So there was another world hidden above the barren cloud heavenly palace. In that world, a beautiful girl was flying from afar, landing on top of the mountain closest to the outside world. She looked at the people outside, smiled brightly, then took out a bright green flute from her waist and placed it by her lips. A moment of silence. The sound of the flute. At that moment, the world became silent again. Only this melodious sound could be heard. Everyone was mesmerized by it. Boom, 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 boom. Suddenly, black figures flew out from the airships, screaming in pain and agony from the sound of the flute. But the girl didn't seem to notice and continued to play her flute. The wind moved with the sound of the flute. Those black shadows struggled to escape, but they gradually disappeared in the wind, turning into powder and disappearing. A few dozen seconds later, the sound of the flute stopped. The girl put down her flute and reported, "Palace Master, the desolate heretic cult that infiltrated here has been eliminated." The palace master's voice came from the void of space. "Very well. You may leave." The girl lightly bowed, turned into a streak of light, and flew towards the mountain shrouded in clouds. This scene stayed in the minds of the children for a very long time. At this point, the airships that had been waiting for a long time all flew into the sky and entered the grotto heaven world. The airships landed on the river, drifting with the waves towards the small island in the middle of the river. This island was very empty, but there were many steep stone bridges that extended from the top of the island to the various mountain peaks. However, the clouds were thick, so some of the stone bridges had already disappeared halfway into the clouds. All the children were sent to the small island. Disciples joining the sect was a grand event that happened once every 3 years. So the peak masters were already waiting here. Even the palace master was here. Gu Qingshan looked at him. The current palace master was a lot younger compared to the last time she saw him. His hair hadn't turned white yet. His entire demeanor was handsome and elegant, giving off a sense of elegance and elegance. No wonder his daughter is such a beauty. Gu Qingshan's thoughts turned and looked next to the barren cloud palace master. A sword was lightly hovering there, but this sword wasn't the earth sword. Seems like the earth sword hasn't been born yet. At this point, all the children were standing in place. The palace master glanced at them and waved his hand. A cultivator walked out and stood in front of one of the stone bridges. "Those who obtained elemental artifacts, go this way to Clearwater Peak," he loudly declared. A second cultivator walked towards another stone bridge and said, "Those who obtained armor, gauntlets, and other spirit artifacts, go this way to Ancient Dawn Peak." The other cultivators all walked towards the other stone bridges and began to explain to the children. "Those who have obtained the spirit summoning artifact, take this stone bridge to Spirit Echo Peak. Those who obtain blades, bows, swords, staffs, and other weapons, go this way to Perching Cloud Peak. Those who obtain musical instruments, Go this way to Fine Sound Peak. Those who obtain formation plates, pill furnaces, copper coins, talisman brushes, hammers, and cooking utensils, go this way to Gray Crane Peak. These are the 6 peaks of Barren Cloud Palace. Everyone must walk up by themselves. Now, line up and go up one by 1 inch. Hearing that, the children went to their respective stone bridges according to what they obtained during the test. While lining up, Gu Qingshan looked outside the small island. Besides this small island that was used as a transfer point, there were a total of 7 peaks on the river. But just now, the cultivators only mentioned 6 peaks. No one came out to show him the way to the largest one. So he asked the elder who brought him in. The elder smiled. The largest peak is the Barren Cloud Palace Master's peak. Only the palace master and his disciple are allowed to go up there. Gu Qingshan silently thought for a bit. Barren Cloud Heavenly Palace. Entering the Heavenly Palace is also the same as entering Shifu's original sect. Shifu also came to the Heavenly Palace to study the sect's spells. Not to mention, the Barren Cloud Palace Master is Shifu's father, which means he's my Shifu. But according to the order of inheritance, Shifu has already been the sect master for who knows how many generations, so the Barren Cloud Palace Master can still be considered my ancestor. A bit confusing, but obviously, for the sake of learning the sect's spells, entering the sect again isn't too much of an overstep. After making up his mind, Gu Qingshan walked straight towards the Barren Cloud Palace Master. When he was halfway there, all the cultivators noticed his movements. But since the Palace Master didn't say anything, no one tried to stop him. Soon, the children also noticed the commotion here. They all stopped and looked at Gu Qingshan in disbelief. Gu Qingshan walked up to the Barren Cloud Palace Master and solemnly bowed. "What do you want?" The Barren Cloud Palace Master looked at him and asked. "Please take me as your disciple," Gu Qingshan sincerely said. The Barren Cloud Palace Master silently looked at him. Then his expression changed. Obviously, someone reported to him about Gu Qingshan's situation. The other peak masters also heard about it and appear to be waiting for a good show. Such a brave child isn't often seen, and a truly talented one at that. They also wanted to see how the Palace Master would deal with this. The Barren Cloud Palace Master asked, "Why should I take you as my disciple?" Gu Qingshan replied, "Because I want to become the strongest sword cultivator of this generation." The Barren Cloud Palace Master asked, "What does that have to do with me becoming your disciple?" Gu Qingshan replied, "You have a sword by your side, so you're obviously a sword cultivator. Furthermore, you're the Palace Master of the Heavenly Palace, so it's easy to deduce that your swordsmanship must be unparalleled. That's why you were able to suppress everyone and ascend to your current position. That's why learning the sword from you wouldn't be wrong." The Barren Cloud Palace Master nodded. "You want to become the strongest sword cultivator? Why not the strongest cultivator?" Gu Qingshan replied, "The world is infinite and there are countless talented people. I wouldn't dare to claim to be the strongest in the world." The Barren Cloud Palace Master nodded again and asked, "Wanting and doing are 2 different things. The path of a sword cultivator isn't an easy one. If I take you as my disciple, but you're useless, wouldn't that be a waste of my careful guidance?" Gu Qingshan clasped her fist. "In the future, if there comes a day when I'm no longer the strongest sword cultivator of my generation in the sect, I will cripple my own cultivation and leave the sect. May heaven and earth be my witness." Boom! A thunderous sound resounded in the sky. The vow to heaven and earth was completed. Everyone's expressions changed. Even the Barren Cloud Palace Master was a bit moved. Although the one who made the vow was only a child, this child already had a spirit root and was connected to the world's spirit energy. He just hadn't started cultivating yet. This didn't stop the law of heaven and earth from recognizing the vow. The 6 peak masters looked at Gu Qingshan in surprise. From now on, if he couldn't maintain his strength as the strongest sword cultivator, he would have to cripple his own cultivation, leave the sect, and become a cripple. This was a vow to heaven and earth that couldn't be violated. Otherwise, the consequences would be a lightning tribulation that would strike him dead on the spot and scatter his soul. This child had forced himself into a dead end. His Tao heart's resolution was truly rare, but he also had the spirit of a sword cultivator. The Barren Cloud Palace Master also seriously evaluated Gu Qingshan for the first time. He muses, I'll ask you, why do you want to cultivate the sword? Is it to stand out and make a name for yourself? Is it to kill the monsters of the desolate world and help the divinities? Or do you want to wander the world without being restrained by anything? Gu Qingshan went silent for a moment. I'm only a child right now, so being able to say such a thing can already be considered as having outstanding talent and a firm Dao heart. If I go any deeper, I'll definitely draw suspicion from others. But I can't lie either. Everyone here is a powerful, great cultivator. So as long as I show even the slightest bit of abnormality, their spirit sense would immediately notice. So for this question, I only need to answer with the simplest of thoughts in my mind. With that in mind, Gu Qingshan answered without thinking. When there's injustice, I'll use my sword to level it out, silence all around. The Peak Masters exchanged glances with one another. The Barren Cloud Palace Master looked up, thought for a bit, then uttered, Kneel. Gu Qingshan knelt down in front of him and bowed. Master, please accept your disciples' bow. The Barren Cloud Palace Master looked at him and spoke. A pure heart, a firm Dao heart. It's rare to see a child like you. Today, I'll take you as my disciple. I hope that one day you'll achieve the Dao and clear away all injustice for humanity. Chapter 801. 5 years later. Barren Cloud Heavenly Palace. In the main hall, the Barren Cloud Palace Master was discussing something with the 6 Peak Masters. The front line is in a tight spot. Our equipment has been greatly damaged. The divinities want us to forge a batch of armors and weapons as soon as possible, the Barren Cloud Palace Master said. Leave that to us, Gray Crane Peak, one of the Peak Masters said. Gray Crane Peak was a master of the 6 arts, so they were responsible for all matters related to smithing. The Barren Cloud Palace Master nodded. That's good. Furthermore, we've received intelligence that the desolate world has recently sent out a group of Nethersoul demons. To prevent them from infiltrating our camp, our sound cultivators will be leading the battle. Everyone turned to look at one of the girls. The girl was sitting cross-legged on a chair, holding a jade flute in her hand. She was the master of Fine Sound Peak, Luo Bingley. The female cultivator who stood at the peak of the mountain and played the flute to dispel the demons when the newcomers first entered the sect was her. Luo Bingley smiled. No problem. Leave it to me, the Barren Cloud Palace Master asked. How many people do you plan to bring? Luo Bingley mused. 5 people should be enough, the Barren Cloud Palace Master shook his head. There are very few sound cultivators. It's hard to train one. Don't bring too many people, Luo Bingley replied. Then I'll only bring 2 people, the Barren Cloud Palace Master nodded. He then looked at a cultivator next to him and ordered, Perching Cloud Peak Master, you will personally bring a group of people with Fine Sound Peak Master. They will be responsible for their safety, the cultivator grinned. Don't worry, Palace Master, I'll bring the strongest sword cultivators and blade users, as well as a few experts with excellent spears, the Barren Cloud Palace Master asked. How many people do you plan to bring? 200. The Perching Cloud Peak Master replied. 200 people should be enough. Make sure to protect them, understood. The Barren Cloud Palace Master stood up and told the Peak Masters. Very well. If there's nothing else, today's meeting will end here. The Peak Masters also stood up and exchanged glances. Clearwater Peak Master said, Palace Master, there's one more thing, huh? Speak, the Barren Cloud Palace Master said. It's like this. It's been 5 years since the last batch of newcomers joined the sect, and we've organized for competitions. This year, it's almost the end of the year, so we're preparing to organize the 5th competition, the Clearwater Peak Master said. Isn't this an annual tradition? The Barren Cloud Palace Master asked. It's mainly because there have been some negative comments about the main peak recently, the Clearwater Peak Master said. There were 7 peaks on the river, and 6 of them surrounded the main peak. The main peak was where the Barren Cloud Palace Master resided. All of the sect's important scriptures, heritage treasures, and the path to heaven were located on this peak. A discussion about the Master Peak, the Barren Cloud Palace Master slowly scowled and spoke seriously. Tell me in detail, what exactly is it actually? It's not a big deal. It's just that everyone thinks that the sect master's disciple hasn't participated in any competitions for the past 4 years, and has never participated in any activities either. That's why everyone is talking about it, the Clear Water Peak Master said. The Ancient Dawn Peak Master added, the kids on our peak also want to compete with the headmaster's disciple. Let's not talk about winning or losing, Palace Master. If you have the time, you should bring your disciple out and show himself so that he can listen to them. The Barren Cloud Palace Master's expression softened. So that's what it was. He asked, for this year's competition, Gu Shan still hasn't signed up? The Clear Water Peak Master replied, that's right. That's why the other cultivators of the same generation have been wondering why the headmaster's disciple has always been hiding and never showed himself. The Ancient Dawn Peak Master spoke. Palace Master, just like Gu Shan fight once that way, even if those kids don't say it out loud, they won't have any opinions about the main peak, the Barren Cloud Palace Master replied. I'll ask him, but I can't guarantee the result, he suddenly chuckled. As for those discussions, they're just a bunch of kids. They won't affect the main peak much. You don't need to worry about it. Saying so, the Barren Cloud Palace Master swung his sleeves and disappeared from the main palace. The Peak Masters exchanged glances. Even the Palace Master can't let that brat fight, the Spirit Echo Peak Master asked in surprise. The Ancient Dawn Peak Master shook his head. If you ask me, the Palace Master spoils that disciple of his too much. He should come out and interact more with his peers through sparring. Only then would everyone acknowledge that brat's position. The other Peak Masters nodded in agreement. Do you think it never happened? Fine Sound Peak Master Luo Bingley replied. I'm in charge of monitoring the sect situation, so I've seen Gu Shan enter and leave Gray Crane Peak a few times. At the time, quite a few disciples chased after him, wanting to spar with him, but were all refused. The Peak Masters were shocked. He refused, sparring between disciples. Unless the difference in cultivation was too great, no one would refuse a spar. Once someone refused a spar, they would be seen as cowards. Not to mention, this kind of sparring was also a chance for a combatant to become famous. Thinking further, the Peak Masters couldn't help but frown. That brat was the headmaster's very first disciple, so he was naturally the eldest disciple of the sect. Regardless of his strength or character, as long as that brat was in that position, he represented every disciple of the sect. With such an identity, even if his cultivation wasn't high enough, he should have come out to follow the Palace Master, take part in various matters, train himself, and accumulate fame. But ever since he joined the sect, the brat basically never showed himself. As everyone knows, the few times he showed himself, he went straight to Gray Crane Peak's bookkeeping room and stayed there for a long time. According to the bookkeeping room's records, he did borrow quite a few spirit cooking and formation-related jade tags. Since he had the sect master's jade disc, no one could stop him. But as a disciple who joined the sect not too long ago, instead of focusing on his swordsmanship, is it really all right for him to be distracted by other matters? The Palace Master is too lenient with him. The Spirit Echo Peak Master muses. It seems we need to find a chance to persuade the Palace Master. After all, his eldest disciple represents the face of the sect, as well as the sect's attitude towards raising its disciples. Indeed, that's how it should be. We'll talk to the Palace Master next time. The other Peak Masters all agreed. Barren Cloud Master Peak. The Barren Cloud Palace Master, Xie Guhong, had returned. He was walking on the stone path that led to the top of the mountain. This way, he would feel relaxed. Every time after a meeting, he liked to take a short walk like this. Suddenly, he stopped and looked up at the sky. Snowflakes were falling down. It was the end of another year. But this wasn't a relaxing year. On the front lines, more and more desolate monsters were appearing, each stronger than the last, to the point where they were almost invincible. Even the divinities were afraid of that monster. Although he couldn't say this out loud, Xie Guhong believed that the top cultivators had already noticed it. That battle was a terrible one. Close to 10 great cultivators had perished in a row, and the humans had to sacrifice their lives in order to finally slay the monster. Indeed, humanity was growing stronger and stronger. However, the crisis was also silently expanding. Xie Guhong sighed. The battle at the front lines, the urging of the divinities, the sect's affairs. All of them required his full concentration. He reached his hand out to catch a snowflake. When will I die on the front lines? Suddenly, he recalled the matter that the peak masters mentioned during today's meeting. Qing Shan, Xie Hong muttered and disappeared without a trace. Deep inside the barren cloud master peak, the sword abyss, all of the sword scriptures in the sect's collection were gathered here. A young man was sitting in the middle of a mountain of jade tags, holding a jade tag in his hand as he silently comprehended the mysteries within. Gu Qing Shan, his entire being seemed to have entered a state of selflessness. In the void of space in front of him, Xie Hong's figure appeared. Xie Hong first waited for a while, but when he saw that Gu Qing Shan wasn't moving at all, he coughed helplessly. Gu Qing Shan immediately sensed it. He opened his eyes. "Master, you're here." He stood up and clasped his fist. "HM, how has your cultivation been recently?" Xie Hong asked. "Everything is fine," Gu Qing Shan replied. Xie Hong tried asking. Your master suddenly recalled something. "You've been in the sect for 5 years now, but you still haven't sparred with anyone." "I have," Gu Qing Shan nodded. Xie Hong asked, "Why haven't you sparred with anyone else?" Gu Qing Shan was a bit confused and replied, "Those seniors whose cultivation is too high. With my current strength, I can't win against them," Xie Hong replied. "Your master is referring to the same generation," Gu Qing Shan replied. "That's too boring. After all, even the heavens hasn't said anything. This proved that I'm still number one. So sparring with them would only be a waste of time." Xie Hong was speechless. This brat once made a vow to heaven and earth that if he's no longer the number one sword cultivator, he'll immediately cripple his cultivation and leave the sect. Yet he's still here. Even the heavens is proving his strength. Xie Hong cleared his throat and asked, "Then, during this year's competition, would you like to participate?" Gu Qing Shan hesitantly asked, "Master, wouldn't it be too much of a blow if I participate?" Xie Hong scowled. This brat, Xie Hong, stood still, but a total of 7 swords hovered in the air behind him. Xie Hong took out a sword from his back. "Come, let your master see just how strong you are as the number one sword cultivator of this generation." "Very well, please enlighten me." "Master," Gu Qing Shan also took out a sword. He didn't bother to bow and simply leapt forward, being able to receive personal guidance from a sword cultivator surpassing divinity. Gu Qing Shan couldn't wait any longer. His first strike was to kill. The sword split into 2, then into 6, then into 36 swords, all of them manifesting into streaks of light that slashed straight at Xie Hong. Gu Qing Shan had combined all the profound swordsmanship he had learned in the last 5 years with his own secret art, as well as all of his combat experience, to unleash this strike with everything he had. Xie Hong's eyes lit up. "It's only been 5 years," he muttered. He swung his sword. Clang, 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 clang. He casually swung his sword, knocking all the sword phantoms away. "Die!" Gu Qing Shan abruptly appeared in front of him. The sword in his hand, and half of his body disappeared without a trace. This strike was so fast that the blade couldn't even be seen. Key! A resounding sound. Gu Qing Shan was sent flying along with his sword. He somersaulted a few times in the air before regaining his balance about 10 feet away. "That's enough." Xie Hong let go of his sword. Gu Qing Shan could only begrudgingly put his sword away. He still wanted to fight, but Shifu had already put his sword away, which meant he wasn't going to fight anymore. Gu Qing Shan looked at the 7 swords on Xie Hong's back and seriously asked, "Shifu, have you already surpassed the realm of Sword Saint?" Xie Hong nodded. Gu Qing Shan doubtfully asked, "Then why do you only have 7 flying swords?" "With your strength, you should be able to control several hundred swords with your mind," Xie Hong replied. "In the past, when I became a Sword Saint, I had 1,954 flying swords with me. But after I surpassed the realm of Sword Saint up until now, I only use 7 flying swords. Why is that?" "Because when you can fully unleash the power of your flying swords, you must first consider how to restrain their power." "Restrain?" Gu Qing Shan muttered. He suddenly recalled that when he sparred with Ilya in the underwater remnant world, She seemed to have said something similar. Xie Guhong replied, "That's right. Retracting is harder than releasing. Only when you're able to restrain all of your power and unleash it as a single sword will your swordsmanship reach grand completion. That's why Shifu retracted it as 7 swords. No, I once retracted it as a single sword, but now that I've reached another realm, it's now 7 swords." Hearing that, Gu Qingshan couldn't help but sigh in admiration. Seeing his expression, Xie Guhong chuckled. "That's enough. Your progress is already very impressive. There's no need to be envious of me. Yes, Shifu, continue your cultivation. Your master will be leaving first." "Very well." Xie Guhong put the 7 swords on his back away and slowly left. Halfway through, he seemed to have thought of something and suddenly stopped. He turned to Gu Qingshan and told her, "For the next 3 years, don't go out and attack anyone. After 3 years, I'll give you a position. You'll be teaching people how to use the sword on perching Cloud Peak." Chapter 802. Although Xie Guhong gave Gu Qingshan 3 years to train his swordsmanship, things often change. 2 years later, on this day, Gu Qingshan was still sitting in the sea of jade tags. He put his sword on the ground next to him. This was a standard sect sword that Xie Guhong gave him to make it easier for him to train his swordsmanship. Holding a jade tag in his hand, Gu Qingshan wasn't in the mood to study his swordsmanship. For once, he was in a daze. When a spirit tortoise sent him into this period of time, everything began from here. During these years, he slowly understood what the spirit tortoise said. This is a phantom image of the age of old. The laws of the world are interconnected. During these years, whenever Gu Qingshan was about to break through, the lightning tribulation would descend. The Tianma and devil kings of the age of old weren't easy to talk to. No one knew each other. Finally, Gu Qingshan didn't have to smile politely anymore. He mustered up his strength and ruthlessly slaughtered them. Seems like I went a bit too far, but the Tianma and devil kings actually became friendly. At the time, the heaven tribulation was about to end, and Gu Qingshan was a bit tired of killing, not to mention that he hadn't been in contact with anyone for the past few years, so he decided to chat with the evil creatures a bit more. And then everyone became friends again. The heaven tribulation was finally over. Everyone reluctantly said their goodbyes. During the subsequent lightning tribulation, Gu Qingshan was a lot more relaxed. Each of these evil creatures from the age of old were talented people. They were good at talking, and they knew a lot of rumors from the age of desolation, so they liked to hang out together. Gu Qingshan also learned a lot from their conversations. However, there was one time when Xie Guhong came to check on his lightning tribulation out of concern. After that, Xie Guhong never came again. When it was finally time to face his karmic tribulation, Gu Qingshan was able to have a few days of peace. As soon as the karmic tribulation was over, he once again advanced to virtualized realm. He immediately sensed something. His true body had replaced this young body. In other words, from the moment he entered the grand virtual realm, the person in this world was himself. All the knowledge, skills, and divine arts he had obtained through cultivation here could all be brought back with him. It was simply too mystical. What kind of great cultivator was able to create such a fragment of an era? Gu Qingshan couldn't imagine it. At this moment, a fiery light flew over. Communication glyph. Gu Qingshan received it and scanned it with her inner sight. Xie Guhong's voice came from the communication talisman. "The ceremony is about to begin. What about you?" Gu Qingshan put the jade scroll back to its original place. He stood up and walked out. 7 years. He had already stayed in the Sword Abyss for 7 whole years. During these 7 years, Gu Qingshan did not use any soul power. With his level of understanding towards swordsmanship, he didn't actually need to spend soul points to decipher the swordsmanship encyclopedia. He only needed to read and ponder, and he would be able to understand the content of each sword manual. After all these years, he noticed that there was a difference between the sword cultivators of the age of old and the sword cultivators of the future. In the age of old, sword cultivators placed more emphasis on how well they could use their swordsmanship than on techniques, so there was no such thing as a secret art. The sword cultivators of the age of old could level a mountain with a single strike. A single strike could fill up an ocean. When sword cultivators of extraordinary power fought, every strike they made was unparalleled in power. There was no such thing as a secret art. But the cultivators of the future were different. Everyone's strength was limited, and they didn't have the cultivation environment and resources of the age of old. So they began to study how to use their swordsmanship to form a type of power that conformed to the laws of the world and unleash a single strike that far exceeded their own power. This was the origin of secret arts. Gu Qingshan didn't know when secret arts first came into existence. He didn't have time to think about secret arts right now. The swordsmanship of this era naturally had its own unique and mystical aspects. Gu Qingshan was immersed in his cultivation of the sword every single day. But now, he had to stop his cultivation, because today, the Barren Cloud Palace Master Xie Guhong was going to publicly accept 2 more disciples. As the eldest disciple, Gu Qingshan had to be present to observe and even teach his 2 junior brothers. Recalling the scene 7 years ago when he was accepted as a disciple, Gu Qingshan couldn't help but sigh. He leapt forward and flew towards the small island in the middle of the 7 peaks. The small island in the middle of the river. The masters of the peaks were gathered. Many Heavenly Palace disciples were gathered around. Xie Guhong stood at the center of the area. 2 young cultivators were kneeling in front of him. Because of their outstanding cultivation after joining the sect, they were able to stand out and prove their strength in various trials and competitions. Their temperament was also praised by everyone. That's why these 2 young cultivators were qualified to become the Palace Master's disciples. And now, the disciple acceptance ceremony was about to begin. Gu Qingshan arrived on the island in the nick of time, obediently stood in front of Xie Guhong and clasped his fist. Xie Guhong asked, "Why did you come so late?" Gu Qingshan explained, "I was reading a sword scripture just now, but I arrived just in time, so I didn't waste any time." Xie Guhong nodded and didn't ask anything else. He knew very well how infatuated Gu Qingshan was with the sword. Sometimes, even when he was there, Gu Qingshan acted like she didn't notice him at all. Xie Guhong casually let them go, but the peak masters and disciples all noticed it. Everyone was feeling an indescribable emotion. Because Gu Qingshan was the eldest disciple, according to the sect's rules, he was the one to preside over this disciple acceptance ceremony. But he was almost late. He was still reading a sword scripture. The peak masters silently scowled. The disciples of the other peaks were unconvinced. "Very well, let's begin," Xie Guhong ordered. Gu Qingshan stepped forward and began to read out the background, past, and achievements of the 2 disciples. While memorizing these words, he observed the 2 disciples kneeling on the ground. Huang Zhan, Xinyang, no Zhao Quan. Seems like I replaced Zhao Quan's position. The ceremony proceeded as planned. After Gu Qingshan finished reading, the most outstanding disciples of each peak came forward to recommend themselves to the peak masters. After receiving the approval of the peak masters praised the 2 disciples for their moral conduct before reporting to the Barren Cloud Palace Master. After receiving the report, the Palace Master personally asked Huang Zhan and Xinyang. The 2 of them naturally expressed their willingness to become disciples. In the end, the Palace Master agreed to accept them as disciples. The eldest disciple, Gu Qingshan, who was in charge of the ceremony, took out the sect's inheritance jade tag and began to record down the Palace Master's acceptance of disciples. At this point, Xie Guhong carefully told the 2 of them in front of everyone, telling them what they needed to pay attention to, how to lead the disciples, and how to be a good role model. Hearing this, Gu Qingshan silently muttered, "So the entire process of becoming a disciple of the Palace Master is so complicated. I still have to perform well for 7 years before that. Seems like I was right to be impulsive before. It saved me a lot of trouble." While he was silently thinking, his surroundings went silent. "It's your turn," Xie Guhong sent his voice. Gu Qingshan regained his senses. I'm the eldest disciple, so it's my turn to encourage my 2 junior brothers." He stepped forward and looked to Huang Zhan and Xinyang. At this point, the two of them were still young and nervous. Huang Zhan's legs were still trembling. Gu Qingshan nodded to the two of them. Cultivate well from now on. Huang Zhan and Xinyang waited for a while, but they didn't hear the rest of Gu Qingshan's words. So he's done. The two of them quickly clasped their fists and loudly replied, "We will follow eldest brother's teachings." Gu Qingshan replied and returned to Xie Guhong's side. Everyone else was waiting to see his performance, but all they saw was that he only gave a curt reply. Many emotions welled up in the hearts of the crowd. At this point, the ceremony was over. Xie Guhong began to arrange his 3 disciples. "Very well. All peaks are dismissed. Huang Zhan, Shenyang, follow your eldest brother back to the Barren Cloud Master Peak. I'll be away for the next 3 months. Your eldest brother will be responsible for teaching you, yes." The 2 disciples answered in unison. The people from the various peaks who were about to disperse paused. Gu Qingshan is going to teach such excellent disciples. Him, a disciple who hasn't shown his face for 7 years. A sword cultivator who doesn't accept any challenges. A guy who doesn't even dare to sign up for the sex tournament. And he's going to teach Huang Zhan and Xinyang? If he becomes a bad influence, wouldn't he be ruining their potential? Everyone became a bit rowdy. At this point, a crimson figure flew down from ancient Dawn Peak and landed on the small island. It was a tall and sturdy young man. He clasped his fist. "Eldest disciple of the sect, Gu Qingshan, I am the current #1 martial cultivator of ancient Dawn Peak. I hereby challenge you if you dare to accept." Gu Qingshan glanced at him. Chapter 803. While the young martial cultivator was speaking passionately, he suddenly fell to the ground. An elder quickly ran over and carefully checked. "I'm fine. I just couldn't protect my soul vessel, so I temporarily fainted," he told everyone. The cultivators all sighed in relief. This time, the peak masters were looking at Gu Qingshan in a different light. They were the most knowledgeable, able to sense the invisible flood of sword chi from the void of space. Only the disciples of the peak were still confused, unable to understand what just happened. Gu Qingshan looked at Xie Guhong. Xie Guhong said nothing. Gu Qingshan cleared her throat and declared with a calm and slow voice, "The Palace Master's disciple acceptance is one of the 6 grand ceremonies of our sect. According to the sect's rules, no one is allowed to casually violate it. Since this is your first offense, and you have a reason for it, I'll punish you to face the wall for 3 months. Carry you away." 2 enforcer cultivators came forward and carried the martial cultivator away. At this point, the spectating disciples still didn't understand what just happened. What happened just now was too unbelievable. None of these disciples had ever come into contact with something like this, not even thinking that such a thing could happen in this world. Their cultivation was still very shallow, so they didn't know just how terrifying the sword chi that gathered in the air just now was. In their eyes, they only saw the disciple who was about to issue the challenge collapse. And then Gu Qingshan berated him. Then, he was clearly a martial cultivator, so how did he collapse while speaking? Could it be that he pretended to issue the challenge and colluded with the others so that this guy, called Gu Qingshan, could display his might in front of everyone? Or could it be that one of the elders secretly intervened? The disciples all felt a bit resentful. As the eldest disciple of the sect, how could he be protected by the higher-ups like this? Who does he think will listen to what he said from now on? The disciples of Perching Cloud Peak exchanged glances and nodded. They leapt up and flew to the small island at the center. A few dozen ancient Dawn Peak martial cultivator disciples flew over and landed on the small island. The disciples of Spirit Echo Peak turned into mist and appeared on the small island at the same time. The disciples of Clear Water Peak rode the waves of the river and casually landed on the small island. The Wonderful Sound Peak had few disciples, so for the time being, they didn't make any moves. However, the sound of zither and zither resonated on the high mountain, giving off a sense of injustice. A group of disciples gathered together. Ignoring the looks on the peak masters' faces, they said in unison, "Eldest senior brother of the faction, Gu Shan, we challenge you. Gu Shan sighed. They were still children. Did he really have to be calculative with a bunch of little kids now that he was reborn? His eyes swept across the crowd. As far as the eyes could see, the monstrous, invisible sword intent easily crushed the minds of the youths. They only felt their minds go blank, and then they knew nothing else. A breath's worth of time. The entire world fell silent. People looked at Gu Shan as if she was a monster. Gu Shan looked at the unconscious disciples on the ground, shook her head, and said, "All of you will be punished to face the wall for 3 months. If you cause any more trouble, your cultivation will be crippled and you will be expelled from the sect. Shifu, do you have any orders?" Xie Gu Hong replied, "That's it." "Yes," Gu Shan replied. Shan, this matter is over. Bring your 2 junior brothers back to the peak first. I'll be there shortly, Xie Gu Hong said. Gu Shan then brought Huang Zhan and Shenyang back to the barren Cloud Master Peak. At this point, the only people left on the small island were the barren Cloud Palace Master, the Peak Masters, and the Elders. No one spoke first. Xie Gu Hong looked around and cleared his throat. "I heard that the peaks have some objections to the way I teach my disciples." The cultivators remained silent. Xie Gu Hong spoke with a gentle voice. "As peak masters and elders, you should take care of your disciples when you have the time. Teach them not to be so reckless and careless, to break the sect's rules at the drop of a hat, only to faint before they could even determine their opponent's strength." No one answered. Xie Gu Hong sighed. "A few hundred years ago, your cultivation was inferior to mine, but a few hundred years later, I can't believe you're still so careless in teaching your disciples, TCH." He swung his sleeves and flew up into the sky, not taking a single cloud with him. No one spoke on the small island, but the atmosphere had become extremely tense. Barren Cloud Master Peak. The 3 disciples had already entered the grand hall of the Master Peak, sat down, and chatted with each other. They needed to wait here for the Palace Master to return and arrange everything. Huang Zhan looked at Gu Shan in surprise and asked, "First brother, how are you so strong?" Gu Shan replied, "I just need to cultivate seriously," Huang Zhan replied. "But I've always been very serious. Other than the festivals and gatherings with the other peaks, I've always been cultivating," Gu Shan replied. "I've stayed in the Sword Abyss for 7 years. Other than going to the other peaks to look for jade tags, I've never left." Huang Zhan and Shenyang both opened their mouths wide and gasped. Being able to cultivate to this point had already surpassed their understanding. If a person could force themselves to this point, what else couldn't they do? Gu Shan's image in their minds suddenly became much larger. But they didn't know that Gu Shan had spent so many years just to return a virtualized realm, which was already a very slow cultivation speed. This time, Gu Shan intentionally cultivated very slowly, because he had enough time, and because being too much of a monster would cause the opposite effect. After all, the laws of heaven and earth were the same in this world. If he cultivated too quickly in front of Xie Gu Hong, it would instead draw his suspicion. Every time Gu Shan broke through, he would try his best to maintain a natural state, so that even if someone noticed, they would think that it was a natural process. At this point, Xie Gu Hong had returned to the Master Peak, feeling refreshed. He immediately began to give orders. Shan, since you've shown your cultivation today, there's no need to stay in seclusion all day. Your realm has already surpassed your peers by 4 to 5 stages, so you should be more than enough to guide them. He tossed a jade disc to her. Gu Shan caught it. "This is the Sect Master Jade Disc. When I'm not here, you can use my Jade Disc to collect resources, scriptures, and cultivation resources from the other peaks, as well as guide my 2 junior brothers in their cultivation." "Yes, Master, where do you want to go?" Gu Shan asked. Xie Gu Hong replied, "I have to go to the front lines. You should know what kind of eerie things are happening at the front lines. I want to see for myself so that I can grasp the truth." Then he solemnly told her, "Teach your 2 junior brothers in my stead." "As you wish, Master." Gu Shan became serious and clasped her fist. Xie Gu Hong nodded in satisfaction. He then told Huang Zhan and Shenyang a few more things in detail. After everything was said and done, Xie Gu Hong disappeared from the Grand Hall. After Master left, Gu Shan brought Huangzhan and Shun Yang to the outside of the sword abyss. The sword abyss was like a mountain valley, but if one wanted to go deeper, they would have to go through layers upon layers of formations and slowly descend several hundred feet into the abyss of the mountain before reaching the sect's hidden sword scriptures. Standing outside the valley, Gu Shan pointed at the 2 cultivation rooms on the side of the valley. Master and I spent some effort to set up 2 cultivation grounds outside the sword abyss. One is completely suitable for the cultivation of spells, and the other is suitable for the cultivation of martial arts. In this way, the 3 of us can cultivate together. Huangzhan and Xinyang both nodded. Gu Shan clapped her hands. Very well, go and cultivate first. If there's anything you don't understand, or if you need anything, come find me at the sword abyss. I also need to go cultivate now. Huangzhan and Xinyang exchanged glances. We've only just entered the Master Peak. Without doing anything else, we're already going to cultivate. Gu Shan continued. One day from now, I will test your strength, then think a way to help you cultivate better. Huangzhan couldn't help but ask, Eldest brother, why one day from now? Gu Shan spoke apologetically. There's a sword scripture that I've only read halfway through, so I'm worried about it. I need to hurry up and finish reading it in one day. Only then will I have the mind to think about your matters. Xinyang couldn't help but ask, Eldest brother, you should at least show us where we're going to stay. Otherwise, we won't even be able to find a place to rest. Gu Shan was a bit surprised and replied, If you're tired, you can rest in the cultivation rooms. Xinyang went silent and digested the meaning behind those words. Huangzhan carefully asked, Eldest brother, did Shifu never arrange a place for you to rest? Gu Shan replied, that's too troublesome. It's better to just stay in the sword abyss. You can cultivate whenever you want and meditate if you're tired. That's a good idea. Shifu also felt that it was a good idea. Xinyang cut in. Which means eldest brother stayed in the sword abyss for 7 years? 7 years and 8 days, Gu Shan replied. Huangzhan and Xinyang both turned to look at the mountain valley. The mountain valley led deep into the mountain. Other than the vast sea of sword scripture jade tags, there was nothing else. Eldest senior brother stayed in there for 7 years and did nothing but cultivate. Gu Shan said, All right, you can all go cultivate. I also need to study the sword scripture. See you in one day. Saying so, he headed toward the mountain valley. Eldest brother, wait a minute, Xinyang called out. Gu Shan stopped, turned around, and asked, Is there something else? Xinyang took a deep breath and asked in confusion. Eldest brother's cultivation has already far surpassed your peers. You could even be considered the strongest of your generation. Why do you still need to cultivate so hard? This question made Gu Shan chuckle. Very well. I'll teach you your first cultivation lesson on behalf of Shifu, he said. Huangzhan and Xinyang both clasped their fists and respectfully said, Please teach us. Eldest brother. Gu Shan stood there, lost in thought for a while. He suddenly asked, Do you know what happened at the front lines? Huangzhan's eyes appeared a bit fearful as he lowered his voice. I heard that the war was quite intense. A divinity went missing. The initial guess was that he was surrounded and killed by desolate monsters, Xinyang also whispered. This was the first time a divinity had fallen in front of everyone. It seems that all the sects have fallen into a panic. Gu Shan smiled. Indeed, what happened this time was terrifying enough to shake the entire world. That's why Shifu personally went to the front lines to investigate the truth, regardless of what happened in the end. What I want to tell you is about the 2 of you. He walked forward and patted his 2 junior brothers' shoulders. You can imagine it for a bit. 10 years later, the desolate world suddenly defeated the divinities. The divinities were unable to save anyone. Your loved ones were killed by the monsters. Everyone in your sect, including your friends, were slaughtered. The woman you liked was also eaten by the monsters as food. And when you wanted to take revenge, you found that your petty strength was unable to save anything. You risked your lives to fight, only to be killed by the monsters with a single slap. Gu Shan softened his voice and continued. At the moment of your death, someone suddenly told you that you could live again. Then you really did travel back in time 10 years to stand in front of me, only to find that you had just become my disciple and were now listening to me. You were given a chance to live again. Chapter 804. 1 month later. Barren Cloud Master Peak. Outside the sword abyss, a large tree next to the valley. Gu Shan was lying on his side on a tree branch. His eyes were closed, holding a jade tag in his hand. He would occasionally frown, occasionally smile, seemingly comprehending the mysteries of the jade tag. A few moments later, he held the jade tag in his hand, no longer releasing his inner sight to observe it. From the looks of it, he had finished today's cultivation and was about to take a nap. But just when you thought he was asleep, he suddenly took out a gourd, opened it, and took a big gulp of liquor. Every day, this is still the most relaxing time, Gu Shan muttered. Putting the gourd away, he changed his position to make it more comfortable. Outside the tree, waves of sword-infused wind blew past, as hazy as mist, yet as sharp as a blade. Huang Zhan and Shun Yang were doing everything they could to defend against the sword-infused wind. "Shun Yang, dodge!" Huang Zhan shouted. He swung the dagger in his hand. Instantly, dozens of earth phantoms flew towards Shun Yang and formed a thick wall of earth behind him. The wall of earth still couldn't stop the sword-infused wind and was blown away in just a single breath's worth of time. Fortunately, Shun Yang had this chance to catch his breath. His body flashed through the thick mist of swords, heading straight for Gu Shan on top of the tree. Gu Shan's lips curled up as he deftly played with the jade tag with one hand. Even as Shun Yang got closer and closer, he still didn't open his eyes. A wave of sword chi suddenly spread from his body, turning into intense sword-infused wind that shot toward Shun Yang. "Help me!" Shun Yang shouted. Huang Zhan wielded the dagger with both hands and flicked it upwards. Boom! The ground Shun Yang was standing on suddenly rose up, helping him avoid this wave of sword chi attack. Shun Yang took this chance to jump up, gritted his teeth, and unleashed his strongest attack. The shadow of a black dragon manifested from his body. Martial Divine Fist, Void Dragon Shadow. Shun Yang attacked the void of space with all his strength. In a split second, the black dragon opened its mouth and attacked Gu Shan. Gu Shan stopped fiddling with the jade slip. He opened one eye and glanced at the black dragon. In his eyes, hundreds and thousands of sword shadows suddenly appeared and disappeared. This was a very strange scene. No one had ever hidden a sword technique in their eyes. It was said that when he reached Ascended Realm, he had already become a sword saint. After listening to his master's words 2 years ago, he no longer went out to look for more flying swords. As he pondered over how to maximize the power of a sword immortal, he was also making preparations to retract his power after he became a sword immortal. In the end, he recalled the incident with the yellow dragon, Qilin, and vermilion bird. He began to attempt to condense the sword chi in his eyes through his mind to unleash the full power of a sword immortal. This way, not only was he able to unleash the power of Sword Saint, he was also able to restrain his power. After all, no matter how many sword shadows there were, they still came from the eyes and gathered in the eyes. Admittedly, this kind of attack had a huge disadvantage compared to controlling flying swords. Flying swords themselves contained extraordinary power, while using sword techniques through the eyes to attack wouldn't be able to borrow the power of the flying swords. That was why, after some consideration, Gu Shan chose to focus on attacking the soul vessel instead. Eventually, he managed to form a thaumaturgy specifically for using swords to attack the soul vessel. Gu Shan called this thaumaturgy Heart Sword. Even Xie Guhong couldn't help but praise him when he heard of such a wondrous idea, praising him for his intelligence and how he found the path to heaven. Ho! The intense sword-infused wind blew the black dragon away. Shun Yang was knocked back several dozen feet before he safely landed on the ground. Gu Shan clapped her hands and sat up on the tree. Very good. You've learned how to work together, and your ability to cast spells and react in battle has also improved. Huang Zhan was disappointed. But I could only force you to open one eye. Shun Yang, on the other hand, had already become numb from the shock, so he calmly thought for a bit before asking, "Does that mean we're stronger than the disciples who challenged you the other day, just because we were able to block the sword chi from your eyes?" You could say that Gu Qing Shan agreed. After all, I only used 10% of my power that day, but against you, even though I only opened one eye, I still used 20% of my power, Shen Yang asked further. What if they worked together? Just like me and Huang Zhan. How much power would you need to use against them? 30%. Let's not talk about this anymore. As disciples of the Master Peak, you should never compare yourself to cultivators of the same generation. You should always look further ahead, Gu Qing Shan replied. Shen Yang nodded, then sighed. No wonder so many peak masters couldn't even say a single word, Huang Zhan asked. First brother, how did you comprehend such a terrifying thaumaturgy? Hearing this, it was Gu Qing Shan's turn to sigh. He seemed to have recalled some unbearable past, and shook his head. Just wait until you've been killed by someone's gaze a few times. You'll feel the same. Huang Zhan couldn't help but laugh. Ahaha. Killed by someone's gaze a few times? First brother's jokes are so funny. Gu Qing Shan clapped his hands and jumped down from the tree with a bit of reluctance. Ever since his two junior brothers arrived, he had something he had to do. Just now, he was lying on the tree branch, sparring with his two junior brothers. This was indeed the most relaxing moment of his life. But today's sparring session was over. Now, he had something else to do. His two junior brothers were still growing, so, aside from cultivating hard, they also needed to keep up with their nutrition. Gu Qing Shan said, I've used up all the ingredients we've stored. I'll go to Gray Crane Peak to pick some more and cook spirit cooking for you tonight. Ah! Huang Zhan and Shen Yang's eyes lit up. First brother's cooking was top-notch. The spirit cooking he made was so delicious that they couldn't stop eating. First brother, I want to eat meatball hot pot tonight, Huang Zhan sincerely said. I want to eat spicy sauce noodles with a few extra eggs, Shen Yang said. Gu Qing Shan didn't even turn around and said, Focus on cultivating. If I see anyone slacking off when I get back, I won't be able to eat dinner tonight. He flew up into the sky and headed towards Gray Crane Peak. Gray Crane Peak. Greetings, first brother, greetings. Greetings, first brother, greetings, greetings, first brother. No matter where Gu Qing Shan went, all the disciples he met would clasp their fists and greet him. With the warnings and explanations of high-ranking cultivators from the various peaks, everyone gradually understood just how terrifyingly strong this first brother of theirs was. People always respected the strong. This would never change no matter what era it was. So Gu Qing Shan's treatment immediately changed. As soon as they found out that he was here to pick up ingredients and other necessities, many disciples ran around to help him get them. Gu Qing Shan actually had nothing to do. He only needed to take a walk around the mountain, enjoy the scenery, and wait for the things on his list to be prepared. At this point, a young girl came over. Senior, Brother Gu, the girl shyly greeted. Hello, what's the matter? Gu Qing Shan asked. The girl didn't say anything, only gave him a communication talisman and ran away. Gu Qing Shan was a bit speechless as he held the communication talisman in his hand. A few moments later, another female disciple descended from the sky and put a jade tag in Gu Qing Shan's hand. Ho! The female disciple flew up into the sky and flew away. Gu Qing Shan looked at the jade tag in his hand, then at the graceful figure flying away, a bit speechless. Of course, I really don't want to find a Tao companion or anything like that here. But from an interpersonal point of view, the way cultivators from the age of old communicated with each other is a bit too strange. The first female disciple at least called out to me before running away, but the second female disciple didn't say anything at all, just threw me a jade tag and flew away. What does that mean? Seems like the first female disciple was the most polite. Gu Qing Shan looked down at the communication talisman. After a bit of thought, he quickly understood. With a communication talisman, a lot of things don't need to be said face to face. There's room for negotiation, avoiding a lot of awkwardness when people first get to know each other. She's considerate and smart. Gu Qing Shan praised, then couldn't help but look at the jade tag in his hand. Not saying anything at all, what's inside? He released his inner sight to scan. Within the jade slip was a spiritual light remnant image. Chapter 805. While Gu Shan was focused on reading the contents of the jade tag, a pair of jade-like hands suddenly reached out and pulled his hand away. The jade tag was taken away. It was now that Gu Shan noticed that someone had arrived in front of him. A beautiful girl. Fine sound peak master, Luo Bingley. Only a great cultivator of Luo Bingley's level would be able to pull the jade tag from Gu Shan's hand without him noticing. As Gu Shan looked at her, he recalled Xie Guhong's teachings. Xie Guhong had always told him to maintain a good relationship with peak master Luo, telling him that Luo Bingley was on his side, that her fighting prowess was unparalleled, even he couldn't compare to her. Among the 7 peaks of Barren Cloud, Luo Bingley was easily ranked first in terms of individual combat prowess. But while Luo Bingley's fighting prowess was unparalleled, she didn't have any good defensive measures, so she was the most eye-catching on the battlefield and needed a large number of cultivators to protect her. Gu Shan recalled his Shifu's words and clasped his fist. "Greetings, Peak Master Luo." Luo Bingley didn't answer, instead releasing her inner sight to scan through the content of the jade tag and asked, "How is it? Are the disciples of my peak good at zither?" Gu Shan stared at the jade tag in her hand and praised, "The music lingers for 3 days. It's all thanks to Peak Master Luo." Luo Bingley lightly knocked his head. "Don't flatter me. I'm telling you, you're not allowed to flirt with female cultivators of my peak." Gu Shan spoke with a serious expression. "Peak Master Luo, I've always been focused on Tao. I've never intended to find a Tao companion in the sect." Luo Bingley observed him as her expression slowly became gentle. As a great cultivator of the sound sect, she was an expert in reading the true meaning of a person's expression, so she didn't need to swear an oath to heaven and earth to know if someone was telling the truth or not. "That's good. Then you can keep this jade tag." Luo Bingley gave him the jade tag. "Thank you, Peak Master," Gu Shan said. "Come with me. I have something to tell you," Luo Bingley said. Seeing her serious expression, Gu Shan had no choice but to correct her attitude and follow her to the top of the mountain. The Gray Crane Peak was shaped like a gray crane, with a long section hanging outside, resembling the beak of a crane. This was the peak of the Gray Crane Peak. Luo Bingley walked to the summit and stood with her hands behind her back. As the wind blew, her rainbow-colored dress danced in the wind. She looked like a fairy that had descended to the world, or a goddess that could fly away with the wind at any time. "If we speak here, I can guarantee that no one will hear us," Luo Bingley said. Gu Shan looked around. The clouds and mist on the peak turned into spiritual rain, scattering along with the wind. The river below the peak flowed with furious waves. The 2 of them stood in the misty rain, alone in the entire world. No one could come forward to ask for any information. Gu Shan spoke with a serious expression. "Peak Master Luo, please speak." Luo Bingley continued. "The situation at the front lines is becoming more and more urgent. Many great cultivators are dying one after another. Humanity is only barely holding on with their numbers. Do you know about this?" I did. Gu Shan nodded. Luo Bingley continued. "Just now, the divinities finally decreed for our sect to select a group of disciples to go to the various divine palaces to cultivate under the guidance of either the divinities or the divinities that serve them. Go to the divinities' places to cultivate." Gu Shan asked. "That's right. Our sect has always had a deep relationship with the divinities, so we received a few quotas to send a group of disciples to cultivate in the divine palaces," Luo Bingley replied. Gu Shan fell into thought. The situation is becoming more and more grim. Humanity is being pushed back again and again, unable to win against the desolate monsters. Even the divinities are at a disadvantage. It seems the divinities want to increase humanity's strength once again, raising a group of powerful warriors for the sake of future wars. Are the divinities getting impatient? Gu Shan blurted out. Luo Bingley was shocked and scolded him. "How dare you? How dare you say something like that? Anything that talks about the divinities is always the beginning of a disaster." Gu Shan smiled. "My apologies, Peak Master Luo. Please continue." Luo Bingley glared at him again, then continued. The sect has decided to hold a competition to select the most talented disciples from each generation to go to the various divine palaces to cultivate. To be able to receive guidance from the divinities, the disciples of each generation would most likely fight to the death for such a chance. Gu Qingshan commented. He then smiled and said, "But didn't we just hold a competition a few days ago? Wouldn't it be troublesome to do it again now?" Luo Bingley replied, "It's different this time. Each peak will be holding a competition between their own disciples to determine the quota." Gu Qingshan was a bit surprised. "There's an E to choose? You great cultivators are teaching disciples every day. Don't you know who's good and who's bad?" Luo Bingley replied, "You don't need to worry about that. I came here to tell you that while the palace master isn't here, the disciples of your peak have always been the role models of the other peaks. So after discussion, we've decided to give your peak 2 quotas." Gu Qingshan immediately asked, "How many quotas are there in total?" Luo Bingley replied, 30 quotas. 30 quotas? Only 2 for the peak." He smiled. Luo Bingley glanced at him and replied, "That's right. This was the result of discussion between the peaks. Because the palace master was lost at the front lines and couldn't be contacted, everyone made this decision. I hope you can quickly choose 2 quotas," she then added. "The ancient Dawn Peak master has already notified Huangzhan and Xinyang about everything, telling them to prepare for the selection of the peak's quotas." Gu Qingshan fell silent. "The other party directly went past me to notify Huangzhan and Xinyang. Although those 2 brats have good temperaments, they're still too young. How could they resist such temptation? To be personally guided by a divinity, this is a great opportunity for a cultivator." Gu Qingshan slowly understood. Each of the peaks would organize a competition among themselves. In other words, I'll have to compete against Huangzhan and Xinyang for the right to enter the divine palace. Gu Qingshan felt a deep sense of malice. While Shifu isn't here, they took out 2 quotas to provoke the disciples of the peak. How dare they? Could it be that Shifu lost contact with them, so they assumed that Shifu wouldn't return? But from what he saw in history, Gu Qingshan knew very well that Xie Guhong was completely unscathed even when the heavenly palace was destroyed. He looked at the clouds outside the peak. The clouds were constantly churning, occasionally raining, occasionally gathering and dispersing. Gu Qingshan muses, only giving 2 quotas to the peak. Which peak master came up with this idea? Seeing that he got to the crux of the matter, Luo Bingley's expression loosened a bit. Luo Bingley replied, "It was ancient Dawn Peak and Spirit Echo Peak suggestion. Gray Crane Peak and Perching Cloud Peak also agreed." Gu Qingshan asked again, "What about Clearwater Peak and Fine Sound Peak?" Luo Bingley replied, "Both of our peaks objected, but we were alone, so the decision was forcefully passed." Gu Qingshan clasped his fist with a serious expression. "Thank you, Peak Master Luo. Since my Shifu isn't here, please tell me about the sect's current situation." Seeing his reaction, Luo Bingley was a bit more satisfied and explained, "Ancient Dawn Peak and Spirit Echo Peak are the Life God's inheritances. They have always followed his teachings. What about Gray Crane Peak and Perching Cloud Peak?" Gu Qingshan asked. "These 2 peaks are loyal to the Star God. As you know, the Star God has never gotten along with Water God." Gu Qingshan asked, "So your Fine Sound Peak and Clearwater Peak are following Water God?" "Indeed. Your Shifu has also listened to Water God's advice and teachings. Water God is a rather unique one among the divinities. He has the friendliest attitude towards humanity. So now that my Shifu's whereabouts are unknown, they want to make a move on the Master Peak." "Indeed. Your Shifu sometimes thinks too much about the casualties of humanity on the battlefield, and Barren Cloud Heavenly Palace is one of the largest sects of humanity, so your Shifu's actions would be followed by countless other sects for some of the most venerable existences. Personally following your Shifu would cause a huge impact, so these words were very clear." Xie Guhong went to the front lines to observe the situation, but unexpectedly lost contact with him. At this point, there were only his 3 disciples on the Master Peak. This was a good chance. If his 3 disciples were to fight with each other and do something shameful, or even do something irreparable during the competition, Then with the help of someone with ulterior motives, the entire cultivation world would know about it. Xie Guhong would be labeled as a failure to teach his disciples. As the master of a sect, if he was labeled as a failure to teach his disciples, the only path he could take would be to abdicate his position. Even if he didn't abdicate, the divinities would naturally speak up about it. Gu Qingshan sighed. He casually reached out his hand and caught a leaf that was flying through the wind and rain. Half of the leaf was yellow, the other half was green. No one knew where it was flying to. Would it go with the flow or ride the wind? Gu Qingshan let go and allowed the leaf to be swept away by the wind. At this point, Luo Bingli continued. The will of the divinities cannot be disobeyed. They ordered us to choose someone to cultivate in the divine palace. So we have to choose someone to go. Gu Qingshan, you are the eldest disciple of the Master Peak, so the competition between the disciples of the Master Peak is inevitable. At that time, all the Peak Masters will be there to watch. You need to quickly think of a solution. Gu Qingshan smiled and casually replied, "It's very simple. I forfeit. Indeed, the Master Peak only has 3 people in total, and we still have to conduct a competition in front of all the other peaks. If this were to start, it would become a joke, so I forfeit. As for the divinity's guidance, Huangzhan and Shenyang will be fine." Luo Bingli was surprised. The other party's decisiveness was beyond her imagination. Gu Qingshan, you should know that this is the divinity's personal guidance. They would definitely be able to learn a lot of divine skills and secret arts. Even their cultivation speed would become faster. Aren't you tempted? Luo Bingli asked. It's fine. Let them go. Master told me to teach disciples in his place. Now that there's a divinity to do it for me, I'll be able to relax a lot and focus on cultivation. This is a good thing, Gu Qingshan replied. Luo Bingli slowly nodded. She could sense that the other party was telling the truth without a single regret. Gu Qingshan continued. My only request is for the 2 of them to go to the Water Divine Palace. That won't be a problem, Luo Bingli replied. If that's the case, I can rest assured, Gu Qingshan replied. Luo Bingli looked at him. As the eldest disciple of the sect, no one would be able to find fault with her giving up the opportunity to her 2 junior brothers. Gu Qingshan, you did well, she said. Gu Qingshan clasped his fist. Then this matter is resolved. I will remember what happened today. Thank you, Peak Master Luo. He turned around and was about to leave. Luo Bingli's gaze wandered a bit, then suddenly asked, Gu Qingshan, we won't be seeing each other often from now on, so I have one last thing to ask you. Please go ahead. What do you think of the divinities? This question was the most important thing of the day. Before, when Gu Qingshan mentioned the divinities, she immediately reprimanded her. But now, she was asking Gu Qingshan what she thought of the divinities of her own accord. Gu Qingshan fell into thought. He looked down at the river, then at the various peaks before stopping at the Master Peak. That's right. What do I think of the divinities? For a few moments, he couldn't help but recall the past. Xie Guhong's words of entrustment resounded in his ears. If she wakes up one day, help me tell her that her name is Xie Daoling. The voice faded and returned to the past. Baihua Palace. Sitting on a throne carved from spirit jade, the peerless woman softly asked, Are you willing to join Baihua sect? In the intense mountain wind, Gu Qingshan suddenly smiled. Peak Master Luo, I heard that your fine sound Peak's musical instruments are renowned all over the world. I would like to ask for a jade flute. After a bit of hesitation, Luo Bingli took out a purple jade flute and gave it to him. This flute was carefully crafted by me. I carry it with me at all times. I hope you will treat it well, thank you. But do you know how to play it? I already do. Receiving the jade flute, Gu Qingshan didn't say anything and began to play it. Oh. As soon as the flute played once, a desolate sword chi rose from it, circled around the raging river for 100,000 times before returning to the top of the 7 peaks. Luo Bingli lightly nodded. The matters of the divinities can't be explained with words, but using the flute to express it is a good solution. She focused her attention and listened. The sound of the jade flute continued, each note becoming lonelier than the last. Following the sound of the flute, sword chi surged like a tidal wave, then flew back and forth like a crane. breaking through the clouds and mist all the way to the sky. For a while, the sound of the flute stopped. The sky-high sword Qi turned into a strong wind that swept across the world, blowing away the clouds that obscured the sky. The rain stopped and the clouds dispersed, revealing the clear blue sky for thousands of miles. The sun was shining brightly, gently shining down on Luo Bingli's beautiful face. The sound of the flute stopped. Luo Bingli silently stood there with ripples in her eyes. In front of her, there was no one else. Only the scenery of the mountain, illuminated by the sunlight, filled with vitality. Chapter 806. Barren Cloud Master Peak. Gu Qingshan had returned. At this time, the Master Peak was already quite lively. The Peak Masters of Ancient Dawn Peak, Spirit Echo Peak, Perching Cloud Peak, and Gray Crane Peak were all sitting in front of a battle arena that was being built. Many disciples were busy setting up the battle arena and decorating the venue. This was a very formal affair, so every step had to be done flawlessly in order to be effective. Eldest brother. As soon as Huang Zhan and Shen Yang saw Gu Qingshan, they immediately ran over as if they had found their pillar of support. "What is it? Why do I feel like you're a bit nervous?" Gu Qingshan smiled and asked. Huang Zhan replied. "The Peak Master said that we're going to fight on the battle arena," Shen Yang added. "Although there are only 3 of us, we heard that this is related to the divinity selection, so we have to fight." Gu Qingshan walked past the 2 of them and looked at the busy cultivators. "Ah? This is the Master Peak. I remember that according to the sect's rules, no one from the other peaks is allowed to do anything offensive here. Hey, you guys over there, who allowed you to set up a battle arena?" The cultivators didn't seem to notice and continued what they were doing. The Peak Masters exchanged glances with contemplative looks. Gu Qingshan silently smirked. 7 years. For the first time in 7 years, he reached his hand into the void of space and grabbed the sword he carried with him. The sword phantom flashed. The heads of 12 disciples flew up into the sky. Everyone's expressions changed. Too fast. The sword was too fast, so fast that it sent chills down their spines. They had thought that since the Peak Masters were here, the outcome had already been decided. To deal with 3 young disciples in their teens, as long as they were here, all they needed to do was scare them a bit and scold them a bit. It would be a piece of cake. But who would have thought that Gu Qingshan would kill as soon as she attacked? Even more ruthless than Xie Guhong. "How dare you?" The Ancient Dawn Peak Master angrily roared. He didn't seem to do anything, but Gu Qingshan was sent flying back a few dozen meters. "You dared to kill our sect's disciples in public. Even if your master returns, he won't be able to save you," the Ancient Dawn Peak Master angrily shouted. The other Peak Masters immediately stopped him. What happened today was also because they were in the wrong. Regardless of how the other party reacted, if they really killed Xie Guhong's eldest disciple while Xie Guhong was still missing, it would become a major event that would shake the entire cultivation world. Not only would many sects flock here to investigate, but even the gods would have to personally ask about this matter. Once it was out in the open, no one would have a good ending. Another example was what if Xie Guhong didn't die. The Ancient Dawn Peak Master scoffed and pulled his fist back. "Killing a disciple of our sect in public after I report this to the divinities, they will definitely punish Xie Guhong for not teaching properly." The Perching Cloud Peak Master stopped him and shouted at Gu Qingshan. "No matter what happened, we could have talked about it slowly. How could you kill him right away? Even if you're the eldest disciple of the sect, you're the one in the wrong." "Huh." Gu Qingshan spat out a mouthful of blood and smiled. He took something out from his bosom. The sect leader jade plate. This was given to him by Xie Guhong before he left. This was the supreme jade disc of the entire sect. Even after a few 100,000 years, it still held supreme authority until it was completely destroyed in Xie Daoling's hands. It was also because Gu Qingshan didn't have this jade disc that she died 4 times in a row at the hands of the 4 divine beasts. Gu Qingshan held the jade disc and infused it with spirit energy. The jade disc shone brightly. The sect is about to collapse. The four divine beasts quickly protect the sect. Gu Qingshan shouted. Boom! Heaven and earth shook. The river flowed backward. The wind howled. Extremely far away in the horizon, a faint yellow band of light suddenly appeared. Deep in the southern sky, flaming clouds began to rise. Then, at the end of the river in the north, an earth-shattering beast roar resounded. All 7 peaks of the river began to tremble, as if something was awakening beneath the water. Everyone's expression changed. Gu Qingshan, stop right now, the Spirit Echo Peak Master shouted. Gu Qingshan infused her spirit energy again. The Sect Master Jade Disc gave off a blinding light. A 7-colored light rose from a master peak to the sky. Protect yourself. Gu Qingshan controlled the Jade Disc and said. The ground of the master peak began to spin. Mystical golden runes and silver talismans appeared from the ground. Under Gu Qingshan's control, they surrounded her, Huangzhan, and Shenyang to protect themselves. The peak master's expressions all changed. Gu Qingshan, what are you doing? You dare to control the sect master Jade Disc. Who gave you the authority to use the Jade Disc? Hurry up and stop. They all shouted at her. This commotion was too great, enough to shock everyone. At this point, the peak masters were already regretting their actions. Damn it, what kind of disciple did Xie Guhong take in? She's insane. Gu Qingshan wiped the blood from the corner of her mouth and didn't bother to look at them. With the sect guardian formation protecting the 3 of us, there's no need to worry about our safety. First brother, a scared voice came from behind her. Gu Qingshan turned around, only to see Huangzhan and Shenyang looking at her worriedly. Gu Qingshan smiled and consoled her. It's okay, before Master left. He entrusted the Jade Disc to me. I'm just taking care of a small matter in his place. While they were talking, dark clouds started to gather in the sky. A true dragon covered in a faint yellow glow peeked its head out from the clouds. Following that, a Kirin enveloped in endless layers of flames appeared. The phoenix soared, the spirit tortoise flew out from the river. They filled the entire sky, looking down at the barren Cloud Master Peak at the same time. Who summoned us? The yellow dragon asked. Me, Gu Qingshan raised the Jade Disc. What is it? The Kirin asked. To protect the sect, Gu Qingshan replied. What do you want? Vermilion Bird asked. Gu Qingshan curtly uttered a single word. Kill, wait. The ancient Dawn Peak Master shouted and spoke to the 4 divine beasts in the sky. This brat is acting recklessly, killing fellow sect members as he pleases, manipulating the sect master Jade Disc to destroy our barren cloud heavenly palace. I hope the 4 guardian saint venerables will understand hearing that. The 4 divine beasts went silent and looked at Gu Qingshan. Gu Qingshan simply held the sect master Jade Disc and muttered, I am the eldest disciple of the sect master. The Jade Disc was entrusted to me by Master himself. This is the orthodox method of the heavenly palace. It is in accordance with the sect's rules. The yellow dragon spoke with a thunderous voice. He isn't lying, Vermilion Bird spoke. Within the heavenly palace, the Master Peak is the orthodox method. Not to mention he has the Jade Disc in his hand, the Spirit Tortoise spoke. The Sect Master Jade Disc is in accordance with the heavenly palace's fate. It is definitely not a rumor. The Jade Disc in Gu Qingshan's hand gave off a clear ring, as if answering the Spirit Tortoise's words. Hearing that, the 4 divine beasts were even more certain. The Kirin mused, we only listen to the Jade Disc. If that's the case, the yellow dragon spoke. Give your orders. They stared at Gu Qingshan. Gu Qingshan looked at the Peak Masters. The Sect Master Jade Disc is here. Kill them for me. Yes. 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 The 4 divine beasts replied in unison. The wind was rising. The 4 divine beasts released an overwhelming, murderous aura. They wouldn't listen to any begging. Once they've made up their minds, they must kill the other party. The Peak Masters were panicking. They never thought that they would fall into a situation where their lives were hanging by a thread when they only came here to set up a trap. The ancient Dawn Peak Master couldn't hold back his fear any longer and shouted to the sky, Life God, save me. Pure white clouds quickly covered the sky. and holy light fell from the sky like a waterfall. This light pierced through all the protective barriers of the mountain and landed on the master peak. A dignified voice resounded. For divine beasts, you are supposed to protect the mountain. Why did you choose to kill human cultivators today? The yellow dragon, Kirin, vermilion bird, and spirit tortoise all prostrated below the sea of clouds. A man who gave off a solemn presence appeared in the sky. Boundless holy light surrounded him. Chapter 807. When the glowing man appeared in the sky, a vast and majestic power spread out from his body in all directions. All the cultivation sects sensed this power. Quite a few great cultivators flew up from their sects, heading towards barren cloud heavenly palace. In the void, many inexplicable existences also quietly arrived. Everyone's gaze was focused on the main peak of barren cloud heavenly palace. The four divine beasts stayed below the clouds, carefully listening to the divinity's question. Gu Qing also stared at the divinity, silently observing him. Legend had it that the gods created the human race in their own image. So, in the billions of worlds, the human form was the universal form of communication for all races. Perhaps the difference between a deity and a human was between the eyebrows. There was a burning golden flame between the god's eyebrows. As for the brilliant light around him, Gu Qing knew where it came from. The creation of the gods was invisible, and the radiance was the manifestation of the majesty of the gods. Therefore, that radiance was the armor of the gods. Back in Tree's collection world, he had also worn an armor of Pantheon. At this point, the divinity had finished asking his questions. The yellow dragon answered, "Dear life god, we are not here to kill cultivators. We are merely following the orders of the Heavenly Palace's sect master to protect the Heavenly Palace's true inheritance," Life God said. Sect master's order? If I recall correctly, the barren cloud Heavenly Palace's sect master is still at the front lines. The yellow dragon replied, "According to barren cloud Heavenly Palace's rules, when the sect master isn't here, we must obey the sect master's jade disc." Life God looked at Gu Qing. Without waiting for the life god to speak, Gu Qing immediately reported respectfully, "Dear God, I'm just following the sect's rules, and the four sacred beasts also approve of this." "Great God, you came to this place with mercy, but according to the rules of my sect, these people must be executed. They are not worthy of your mercy." It was quiet all around. The entire heavenly palace fell silent. Almost the entire world, including countless powerful cultivators, deities, and beings who were secretly paying attention to this place, fell into silence. This person must be crazy. How dare you speak to a god like that? Gods rarely interfere with the internal affairs of human sections. No, nothing like this had ever happened before. However, the first time the god interfered, he was easily rejected by a young man. The life god's voice also changed a bit. "Let me ask you, these human cultivators are all very powerful, and they are all peak masters of their respective peaks. You're only a disciple. What crime do you have to sentence them to death?" Hearing this, Gu Qing immediately said, "According to our sect's rules, no one can come to the Barren Cloud main peak without Palace Master summons. This is going to the main peak without permission and recklessly building buildings is a great crime against the sect. This is the second one. As the eldest disciple of the sect master, I personally asked about the matters of the master peak, yet no one paid any attention to me. This is disrespect to the entire Barren Cloud Heavenly Palace. These are the third, taking advantage of the Palace Master's absence to request the Palace Master's 3 disciples to kill each other. This is a malicious and rebellious act. This is the fourth. Number 5, wait." The life god interrupted him. The life god couldn't bear to listen any longer and silently regretted giving Gu Qing the chance to speak. The divinity spoke in front of everyone. "You said that they requested the disciples of the main peak to kill each other, but that isn't the case. To help humanity, The divinities provided a few slots to cultivate in the divine palace. The ancient Dawn Peak Master immediately followed up. After the sex discussion, we unanimously decided to give 2 slots to the main peak. That's why the main peak is hosting a grand competition. In truth, every peak is the same. What kind of rebellious act is this? I really don't understand, Gu Qing Shan slowly spoke. If it's a grand competition of the main peak, then this should be done by my Shifu. Shifu isn't here. I have the sect master Jade Disc, and I'm also the eldest disciple of the sect. According to the sect's rules, the 9th, 15th, and 31st rules, this matter should be decided, prepared, and presided over by me. What does it have to do with you? What authority do you have to come to the main peak to do this? If I remember correctly, if you dare to use the authority of the sect master without the sect master Jade Disc, the only outcome is death, the ancient Dawn Peak Master argued. We were worried that a young man like you wouldn't be able to handle this matter properly, causing your 2 junior brothers to hold a grudge against the sect, Gu Qing Shan replied. I've already decided to give up on the slots. Huang Zhan and Shen Yang will go directly to the Divine Palace. The Peak Masters were stunned. He gave up on the chance to enter the Divine Palace. He's only a young man. Why would he give up on such a chance? Doesn't that mean all of our plans would be for naught? Gu Qing Shan sternly spoke. That's why I've already dealt with this matter, yet you're still doing this, and that on the main peak. Try to force the main peak's disciples to kill each other in public. Who gave you the courage to do so? He raised his voice and shouted, The sect master Jade Disc is right here. As the peak masters of other peaks, you dare to take advantage of the sect master's absence to use the sect master's authority. According to the sect's rules, you should be executed on the spot. For divine beasts, go. The 4 divine beasts roared in unison, but stood still in the sky. They carefully looked at the life god. The life god shook his head at them, silently preparing his words. There were too many people paying attention to this place, and this was the most crucial moment of the war. Even if it was him, he needed a valid reason in order to save those people's lives without damaging his dignity. At this point, Gu Qing Shan bowed deeply to the life god. He respectfully spoke. Venerable Creator, humanity's faith, supreme divinity, of course, we must listen to you first, because your will is the truth of this world. If you think they are right, then they are right. Even if my master is risking his life on the front lines, even if there's no news of him, as long as you say so, these people can indeed ignore the sect's rules and use the sect master's authority without permission. He opened his hand and displayed the sect master Jade Disc in front of everyone. Great divinity, we will naturally listen to whatever you say, but if you do that, we'll fall into chaos. That's not going to be easy. So what's the point of this sect master Jade Disc? Our human race doesn't need any sects. We could just fight for power and profit. There's no benefit in going to the front lines. There are always people stabbing us from behind. We can't even protect our own disciples, saying so. Gu Qing Shan threw the sect master Jade Disc up high. He swung his sword. Everyone's expressions changed. The great cultivators, sect masters, divinities in the sky, as well as the life god in the sky, as well as the peak masters were all stunned. If the Jade Disc were to shatter with this strike, it would become a huge matter that would shake the entire world. This would signify that the divinities had interfered with the affairs of human sex, causing chaos and chaos within the sections. The divinities would be able to decide anything regarding the internal affairs of the human race. The sects would lose their meaning. The front lines would become a pile of loose sand. Furthermore, most importantly, Gu Hong's soul vessel was connected to the sect master Jade Disc. So if he was still alive, he would be able to sense the Jade Disc disappearing. No matter what he was doing, as long as he was alive, he would definitely return. At this moment, countless people wanted to stop Gu Qing Shan, but also countless people didn't want to stop Gu Qing Shan. Everyone wanted to know if Gu Hong was dead or not. If Gu Hong was dead, his disciple would immediately be accused of disrespecting the sect master Jade Disc and be arrested. If Gu Hong wasn't dead, then things would be interesting. As the Barren Cloud Palace Master, a renowned, peerless sword cultivator, Xie Guhong would definitely fight to the death against these peak masters who humiliated his disciple. The number one sect of the world, the barren cloud heavenly palace, would fall into internal strife. This sect would soon fall apart and head towards collapse. Collapse under the interference of the divinities. Time seemed to have stopped at this moment. Countless thoughts flashed through everyone's minds. Finally, Gu Qingshan's sword was about to touch the jade disc. No one tried to stop him. At this crucial moment, Gu Qingshan's sword suddenly stopped. He stared closely at the jade disc, because an inner sight was transmitted to him from the jade disc. The owner of the jade disc was Xie Guhong, and this inner sight naturally belonged to Xie Guhong. His voice came from the jade disc. Qingshan, I've done what I came to do and will soon return to the sect. How has your cultivation been lately? Have you been teaching the two junior brothers well? Gu Qingshan didn't show it on her face, but she was silently laughing. Shifu is quite a clever person, being able to coordinate so well at a time like this. The current situation is even better than me breaking the jade disc. Gu Qingshan then clasped her fist towards the jade disc. Shifu, we're doing well. The two junior brothers have also been cultivating very diligently, but there are a lot of matters in the sect that you have to deal with after you return. Very well. I've killed the demon and will soon return to the sect, Xie Guhong replied. The voice from the jade disc disappeared. The jade disc fell back into Gu Qingshan's hand. Everyone was whispering. Xie Guhong said he killed the demon? What exactly did he do? Impossible, the ancient Dawn Peak master muttered. He was clearly lost in the desolate world. How could he? At this point, something else happened. In the sky, countless streaks of light came from afar and landed in the hands of great cultivators of various sections. Communication talismans. A large number of communication talismans. Following that, another streak of light flew into the sky and appeared. It was a cultivator in full armor. He first bowed to the life god, then couldn't help but excitedly declare to everyone, "We achieved great victory at the front lines." The Lord of the Seven Swords, Xie Guhong, led his army deep into the desolate world and assassinated the desolate Saint Power Demon King. Now that the desolate world is in chaos, our army attacked with everything we had and killed countless enemies. The voices of discussion resounded. Everyone's faces lit up with joy. This was humanity's first great victory in the last few years. After this battle, humanity would be able to regroup, regain their morale, and gain a long period of strategic adjustment. The smile on Gu Qingshan's face grew brighter. Xie Guhong is definitely safe and sound. Countless years later, he will once again spar with the sword against a divinity, and even win by half a move. So I know that as long as I don't go overboard today, I won't be suppressed to death by anyone. Not even a divinity. In such a public situation, without sufficient reason, even a divinity wouldn't dare to touch me. Xie Guhong risked his life on the front lines, but there were people plotting behind his back. Even his disciples were forced into a dangerous situation, forced to kill each other. In the end, the divinities even tried to absolve those people. If such a thing really happened, who would be willing to go to the front lines? Who would be willing to risk their lives for the divinities? Who would be willing to sacrifice their lives for a monster? Looking back at the peak masters, they were already pale, unable to say a single word. Gu Qingshan thought for a bit, then clasped his fist and bowed to the peak masters. My apologies, as the eldest disciple of the sect. I lost my composure. What happened today was my fault. In front of everyone's gazes, he appeared ashamed. In truth, as a disciple, I shouldn't have offended you today, nor should I have acted too rashly. That's why I should wait for Master to return and have him personally take your lives. That would be more appropriate. Chapter 808. The situation was on the verge of exploding. Even the life god himself showed up at barren cloud heavenly palace. But Gu Qingshan managed to wait until Xie Guhong's inner sight sent his voice. Gu Qingshan used a few simple words to gloss over everything that happened today. Whether it's a divinity or a cultivator, if they have any objections, they can go find Xie Guhong. Since Xie Guhong is still alive, he is the Heavenly Palace's palace master. Everything is decided by Xie Guhong, so it's only natural that everything follows the rules. Then next, Gu Qingshan cleared his throat and clasped his fist around. One last thing. Everyone's hearts tensed up as they turned to look at him. The group of great cultivators all had solemn expressions, waiting for the young man to speak. This scene was as laughable as it could get. But it couldn't be helped. This young man doesn't play by the rules, so everyone was scared. Under everyone's watchful eyes, Gu Qingshan spoke with an apologetic expression. The Master Peak doesn't allow meals. I'm sorry. Everyone was surprised. They were all grand cultivators, so they could naturally understand the meaning behind those words. If there's nothing else, and I don't intend to invite you to a meal, why are you still staying here? The Peak Masters looked at him, then at the Life God, not knowing whether to leave or not. Without the Palace Master's permission, cultivators of other peaks can't stay on the Master Peak. Staying here will be telling others that they're violating the sex rules. But since the Life God hasn't left yet, how could these Peak Masters dare to leave? In truth, the one who felt the most uncomfortable was the Life God. As a divinity, why did you come down here? Since he gave up on the matter and said that he'll wait for Xie Guhong to return, that means there's nothing else to do. Even if there's something else, you should go talk to Xie Guhong. And now he's saying that the Master Peak doesn't allow meals. Then why is a divinity like you still staying here? Waiting for a meal? No, this isn't a matter of food or not. In fact, even if the Master Peak did allow meals, would a divinity like you be shameless enough to eat for free? No, that's not the problem either. What's the problem? Regardless of what you do, it's not right. The Life God calmed himself down and declared with a dignified tone, everyone is dismissed. After Xie Guhong returns victorious, you can discuss the internal affairs of Barren Cloud Heavenly Palace again. His expression was solemn, his tone dignified, and his bearing dignified. But what he said wasn't that obvious. The Life God also realized this and didn't want to stay here any longer. It turned into a streak of golden light and shot into the sky. Seeing that the god had left, the four divine beasts also quietly left. The peak leaders had no choice but to bring the cultivators who were still alive and the corpses away from the main peak. When they came with great momentum, but when they left, they said nothing. Gu Qingshan held the sect master jade disc in her hand and sent a spell into it. He smiled and waved towards the outside of the mountain. Everyone, please go back. We're going to eat. The jade disc lit up. Pa! The entire main peak disappeared. The concealment formation on the sect master's jade disc was activated. The main peak was still there, but it was no longer visible. The three disciples of the main peak went to eat. There's nothing else to see. Before, because the divinity appeared, everyone came here to listen to his teachings. But now that the divinity had left, the Barren Cloud Master Peak's gates have already closed. If you still refuse to leave at this point, you'll only end up being chased away. After this, who wouldn't know what kind of disciple Xie Guhong took in? Let's go before it's too late. While the great cultivators scattered in different directions, they silently thought to themselves, the next generation of Barren Cloud Heavenly Palace is not to be trifled with. That's too scary. The great cultivators returned to their sects with various thoughts in their minds. 2 days later, Barren Cloud Master Peak. Huangzhan and Shenyang were standing guard outside the Sword Abyss. When Xie Guhong returned, he solemnly ordered them to guard this place and not to go anywhere. Huangzhan had been standing guard for a long time, so he was a bit bored. He glanced at Shenyang and couldn't help but ask, "Third brother, there's something I don't understand. Please tell me." "Senior brother," Shenyang replied. Huangzhan asked, 2 days ago, why did all those people leave when senior brother said you won't leave any food? Shenyang asked, then what should they do? Continue to stay on our Master Peak? Huangzhan waved his hand dismissively. That's not what I meant. I just felt that senior brother's words were very clever. No matter how much I thought about it, I really couldn't learn it. Shenyang chuckled. If it was you, what would you say? Huangzhan puffed out his chest and shouted, if there's nothing else, Then scram from the master peak. Shun Yang glared at him. The divinity is in the sky. You dare to tell the divinity to scram? Huang Zhan was a bit dejected. That's why I felt that senior brother's words were very clever. He clearly told everyone to scram, but all he said was that he wouldn't leave any food. Just look, even the divinity couldn't scold him. He just turned around and left. That's why he's our first brother, Shenyang replied. While they were whispering, inside the sword abyss, Xie Hong was also scolding Gu Qingshan. Don't you know how many times you almost offended the divinity? Xie Hong asked. Gu Qingshan smiled apologetically. I know, I didn't offend the divinity at all. Xie Hong sighed. You can't do that anymore from now on. Otherwise, if you offend the divinity one day, even I won't be able to save you, Gu Qingshan replied. I've already offended him. Xie Hong went silent. That's right, he slowly said. The life god must hate you to the core. It's very hard to gain the favor of the divinity, but it's very simple to make them hate you. If you ever run into the life god's people again, make sure to stay as far away as possible. Also, don't easily cause trouble from now on. Make sure to observe the situation before you act. Gu Qingshan was a bit confused. Master, what do you mean by that? Xie Hong stayed silent for a bit before answering. The life god has protected the peak masters. Gu Qingshan went silent, then smiled again. He is a divinity. No one would dare to disobey the divinity. Is that right? That's right. Gu Qingshan, you should know that we are all creations of the divinity. The divinity's orders are the meaning of our existence. Master, do you really think that way? No, the divinity thinks that way. Then what about Master? I'm very grateful that they gave me life, but since I am alive, I have my own way of thinking. Xie Hong clapped his hands. From the void of space, a figure appeared. Luo Bingley. She told Gu Qingshan, I need a drop of your blood, of course, the more the better, without hesitation. Gu Qingshan cut her finger and tossed a drop of blood over. Luo Bingley pressed her hand against the air. The drop of blood immediately hovered in the air. Luo Bingley took out her flute and played a song towards the drop of blood. The song was over. The drop of blood slowly turned into Gu Qingshan's appearance. This is... Gu Qingshan doubtfully asked. Xie Hong explained. Your two junior brothers will be heading to the Water God Palace to cultivate, and I will be heading to the front lines again, so you will be the only one left on the Master Peak. This situation is extremely dangerous. Qingshan, if I really die the next time, the Peak Masters will definitely take your life. You won't even have time to alert the 4 divine beasts, and so? Gu Qingshan asked. And so, we will create a real you to stay on the Master Peak every day to cultivate, Luo Bingley replied. Then what about me? Gu Qingshan asked. Xie Hong and Luo Bingley exchanged glances. Luo Bingley asked, I heard that you're quite proficient in the 6 arts. It's passable, Gu Qingshan replied. Xie Hong continued. We only have one last absolutely confidential and reliable identity left. Not only does humanity not know about this identity, not even the divinities know about it. Qingshan, I'll leave this identity to you. I hope that you can use it as much as you can and focus on your swordsmanship every day. He spoke sincerely. Once your swordsmanship is on par with the Peak Masters, we'll be able to be a bit more assured about your safety. At that time, you can return to the Master Peak as the sect's first disciple, Luo Bingley also added. Not only is that identity reliable, but the location is also very safe. You won't be very busy after you arrive. After you're done with what you need to do, you can use the rest of your time to cultivate. Where am I going? Gu Qingshan asked. Humanity's 23rd Reserve Corps Camp, which is also the last of the 23 Reserve Corps camps, Xie Hong replied. Which means I'll be a combat cultivator, Gu Qingshan nodded. A Reserve Corps camp probably won't enter the battlefield so soon. Not to mention it's the 23rd Corps camp. But going to the battlefield is even better. That way I'll be able to earn soul points. While he was thinking that, the 2 great cultivators both shook their heads. No, not a combat cultivator. The last confidential and reliable identity we have is the cook of the 23rd Reserve Corps camp, Luo Bingley replied. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.